Good evening, and welcome to the July 23rd, 2018 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I just want to begin this meeting tonight by offering a congratulations. A resident of our community today was appointed the new police commissioner of the city of Boston, Willie Gross, a longtime colleague, and both town manager Mike Dennehy and I have known him for a long time, and on behalf of all of us, I just want to send him out a very big day for him and a big day for the city of Boston. And once again, it shows that some very special people come out of this community very often, and congrats to him, he's a good man. We're going to begin tonight with a meeting of the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Fund. I'm going to actually recuse myself on item number, we're going to begin on item number 2, and the Vice Chair Mike Zulis will take over this, because there's a part of that letter that I didn't realize until yesterday that I'm in conflict with, so I'm going to have to recuse myself, and then I'll come back in when we get to item 3. So with that, I yield the meeting to Mr. Zulis. Although I think, do we have to take a roll call first to go into? No, okay. Notice I always refer to the senior member who knows the answers. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Wells. Yep. All right. So the item on the agenda, as the chair mentioned, is the Milton Residence Fund request, and I believe we have representatives from the Milton Residence Fund here to make a presentation and a request. So I'll ask them to come up to the table now. If you could identify yourselves and.
Good evening. I'm Roger Gray at 300 Adams Street in Milton, Mass. One of the directors of the Milton Residence Fund, Martin and Swift, and the Henry B. funds as well.
I'm Andrew Maloney. I live at 258 Reedsdale Road. And like Roger, I'm a trustee of First Parish, which administers the Milton Residence Fund, the Parish Members Fund, and we are also directors of the Henry B. Martin Fund and the Swift Charity.
We have a presentation we sent out last Friday morning pretty early. I don't know if you happen to have a copy of it or if you'd like printed hard copies. I have it as well, if that's helpful to follow along tonight. Mm-hmm. So,
Yep. Is this something we can put up on the
Yep.
screen? Great. So we can put
great.
it up on the screen, and I'll take
Great.
a
You can
hard
have a-
copy as well. Thank you.
We got the, we
Oh,
made
we
the,
do actually have it. Yeah,
you got it?
yeah, we actually have it.
Okay. All right, well, listen, again, thank you. Maybe I'll just wait a second,
Yeah.
see if it comes up. Everybody can follow along in the room. While we wait for that to come up, I thought I'd mention that Diane Ferrari, the actual social worker who administers the fund, is with us tonight, as is Anne Marie and Ruth, who are also part of the committee that runs and administers and sees over the funds. And they're with us. If you have any questions, we may phone a friend to bring them in.
Great.
Okay. All right. Well, looks like we got some PowerPoint going. I don't know who's driving, but if we could put it in slide mode, that'd be great. Maybe. In time. Okay. All right. Well, maybe while we get that going, I'll just begin and give you some time, jump right in and give you time here. So, if you take a look at the funds as they've been administered, the Milton Residence Fund, the Henry B. Martin Fund, and the Swift Charity Funds collectively are funds that go back 120 years in the town of Milton. And the original establishment was the Swift Charity, with the Swift family donated in 1898 money to be administered specifically for the benefit of the town poor. And not too far on the heels of that, Henry B. Martin Fund, as well as the Milton Residence Funds, came on in 1950, 1951. And all of them share a common objective of, again, assisting the town poor. They're sometimes referred to in town as community funds. They're sometimes generically, I would say, referred to as Milton Residence Funds. Okay. For the last 25 years, we've hired a professional social worker, Diane, being in that seat now for the last 11 years, to administer and oversee and screen and vet applicants for funding that comes out of the funds. Prior to that, it was actually done by volunteers out of First Parish Church here in Milton, and the funds were administered. But as time progressed and the cases got more complex and the needs and the dynamics of the recipients became more complex, it became clear about 25 years ago we needed to bring in an expert to really do the licensed social work evaluation for the funds. When the funds were originally established, they were set up to really benefit many times widows and orphans in town. And then over time, as the demographics of the community changed, so did the oversight of the dollars, and so did the administration of those dollars. So if you take a look at the execution of it, social worker today is covering, Diane is about 175 to 200 families in town. Over the last 14 years, 1,500 families and individuals have received funding from the dollars that are set aside. And Diane has worked very closely, as many of you may know, working about 24 hours a week, right? A 24-hour work week. It's a pretty much a three-part position, right? FTE. She has worked closely with Milton Public Schools, Council on Aging, Health Department, Police, Fire, and other community agencies to identify those in need and try to deliver collaboration of care. So the casework is evaluated, and then referrals are made in some cases to other resources that may be available in Boston or the surrounding South Shore communities. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Great. Let's jump right to what are people saying? What do the recipients of the dollars say? And you can read these at your leisure, but there are just kind of three that I wanted to call out. The first one is the upper left-hand corner, where you look at a thankful senior who talks about did not know how they would have paid their bills. Thank you for letting me benefit. Their 87-year-old heart is warm with thanks. And then if you go to the lower middle, you can see there's a grateful family. There are families that have approached us over the years where a husband and wife both lost jobs at the same time and were faced with possible challenges in meeting their payments for mortgages and utilities, and the funds were able to support them through that time of crisis and need until they could get back on their feet. So if you take a look at the lower right-hand corner, the final one I wanted to call to your attention is a single mom who went back to nursing school as a result of getting her funds from the dollars available to help cover her utility bills, and is now on her track to going back and getting her nursing degree. So you can see it kind of covers a spectrum from a single mom to somebody we're trying to help bridge a gap to education to a family that presents themselves in crisis. Okay. If you take a look at slide 4, here we try to do the financials for you. Really tried to simplify where's the funding come from and how do we use it. A couple things I want to highlight is when the funds were originally established, there were really 3 sources of income, the 3 funds themselves. And if you fast forward to today, there are 12 different entities within the Milton community that are contributing to the funds that Diane administers and screens and vets the applicants and makes out the grants and makes out the gifts. And those range from the Milton Charitable Police to Fire Department, to First Parish Church, to East Congregational Church, to individual donations of people that often will just send in checks to Diane and say, please put this to good use. Milton Helping Hands, all the way down to the Council of Aging where we sit today. So you're seeing other funding mechanisms come in and use the administration of our offices to decide who should receive funding and how those should be vetted and screened. And then you'll see Governor Stoughton funds, which we're here to talk to you about tonight a little bit further, have been generous in years past. We'll talk a little more about that. Copeland Family Foundation has been exceedingly generous, particularly in the last several years. And the parish members and Milton residents in the Swift and Henry B. Barton are listed below. And then you can see where the grants generally go, just in broad brushstrokes, really 4 general areas are the big ones: heating, housing, utilities, and medical. Okay. You see some senior activities, a little bit on education, some sports and summer camp enrichment programs, but primarily it's to keep people in their homes, get food on their table, and keep the lights on. Okay, that's really been the long-term objective of the funds. Okay. If you take a look at slide 5, and this is where we begin to get to the ask and why we're before you tonight, is the number one issue that we've been having is that since the market corrections back in 2009, we've been distributing out of the charitable funds that Andrew and I and the other directors oversee about 8% of the balance of those funds on an annualized basis. And for those of you who work in finance and work in numbers, generally you want to distribute no more than 4 or 5% so that the funds can be there for generations to come, keep up with inflation, outperform the markets a little bit, and may last for generations so we can be here in another 120 years and not out of money in the next 20. And so prudently, we know we need to cut back to a 4 or 5% level. And it just so happens that we know that, fortunately, in your capacity as trustees of the Governor Stoughton funds, the proceeds from the town farm sale have rolled into that trust. And again, the objective of that trust is very similar to the work that we do, which is to benefit the town poor. So we're here tonight to ask you to consider an ask of a grant increase to $80,000 to $100,000, which would allow us to continue to fund the work that Diane does. And we've gone to other funding sources as well, looking for funding to help support her work and efforts. And so with that, I'll take a breath and open it up to any questions you might have before we maybe take a moment and talk about the future state we have a vision to.
Any questions at this point? I will ask, Mr. Gray, do you anticipate that the distributions this year will be somewhat equivalent to the distributions last year, the 293? Was it
Yeah,
293,
so, the
293K?
274,000? Yeah,
I'm looking at distributions of 293,000.
yes, 293. Yeah, so roughly, we would anticipate that year over year, we're going to run between like 280, 300,000
Okay.
in distributions. Now, if we had 320 or 350, I suspect Diane, if I asked her and turned around, she could tell you she could put that money to work as well. But in order to continue to maintain the level of support she's been doing today for about 170 to 200 families, it's roughly 300,000 a year.
And you anticipate that the mix of uses will be roughly the same?
We do anticipate, I think, that they'll be roughly the same. Primarily those four big ones at the top, and then a little bit spread below that. And so again, it's really, the intent of it is heating, housing, utilities. And it's interesting, if you go back even 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot we were giving for medical. But with the changing medical scene in this country, clearly that's been an unexpected, or I guess I should say anticipated need.
And just, does anyone else have a question? I don't want to, I just have one more.
Sure.
Do you anticipate that that 80,000 will get you to the point where you're down to 4 to 5% of the corpus?
Yes,
Yes.
we do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if I could add a little bit to Roger's presentation and maybe give a little color to the presentation as well. The two most significant things that Diane Ferrari has done in her 11 or 12 years as a social worker across the green is to increase the other sources that come from town to become more of a catalyst in town by taking referrals from the Board of Health and sometimes from the school, sometimes from the police, to work in sort of transitional aid rather than what was set up before the advent of even Social Security. So we've managed our caseload to try to be to have a greater impact on people who may receive funding from us. I also want to assure all of the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Trust that there's a little infrastructure that goes behind this as well. We have a bookkeeper at First Parish in Milton who reconciles the accounts every month for distributions. We engage routinely with a fellow, Bill O'Connell, who's a CPA, runs an outfit called Wisdom Over Wealth, which works with a lot of churches and community service organizations, who does an audit of our policies and practices to make sure that things are handled accordingly. We also work with an independent custodian for the investable assets, about $2 million that are in the two trusts, and have an independent investment manager as well. So there's a little bit of a framework here to have the appropriate segregation of duties and responsibilities.
Thank you.
Mike pointed out that he was looking at that 293 number, and on the funding side, I'm probably being too picky. It's 276, and I just wondering why it's different.
Yeah, so the funding comes in at 276. We've spent 293, right? Because the need has been there,
Yeah.
right? And we've been able to support that with some over distributions from the corpus over time.
Okay.
And it also, this is from a 1/1 to 12/31, year end, if you would. So that's part of our challenge, right? Is we have more going out than we have coming in.
Right. Well, that's a great illustration.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you.
Do you have more, Mr. Maloney, or
The-
Mr. Gray? Sorry.
The only last thing I would just mention to you is that the last slide is just an open question, which is future state. And this really is for a conversation beyond today and the time that we've had allotted, and you've been very generous with that, is that just as you begin to think about it, as you put your trustee hats on as Governor Stoughton, and you have that responsibility and the gift of the dollars that have become available, we just wanted to highlight that we're open to ongoing dialogue to determine what's the best future state look like. How do we help support you in the endeavors that you have and the responsibilities you have as fiduciaries for those dollars? As Andrew mentioned, we have the infrastructure in place, the checks and balances in place, the social worker on staff, and in many ways, one of the ways when we think about it on our side a little bit is, you know, if it weren't not for this, the town might have to have a social worker on staff to help with that. So is there a way we could come to some sort of a routine of a partnership of sorts to help? We'd be open to that, and I just wanted to put that out there for the select people as trustees to think about.
Any other questions, comments?
No.
I have a question regarding the amount of the request. It says 80 to 100,000. 60 would get you to level funding of your existing programs. There's an additional 25 requested to expand grants and programs. And are we into comment as well as questions at this point?
I think we are,
Okay.
because we're being asked, we're going to be asked, I think, to
Okay.
to
Yeah.
approve the request, so.
So, one of the things that, as you both rightly pointed out, the Governor Stoughton Fund has had a significant inflow of dollars as a result of the sale of
Sure.
the acreage up at the town farm. But what we've talked about, and I think we only brought it up under future agenda items, we haven't really had a discussion about it, is the fact that we're gonna need to get some professional advice on managing these resources going forward, because it's a significant amount. It's a significant increase. And the goal is for it to last for a long time, to cover for the same purposes that you have, the same goals, to cover future generations. So, I mean, I think for me right now, I'd be comfortable with appropriating 60,000, or not appropriating, but transferring to the Milton Residence Fund 60,000, and we could consider a future amount at a later date. I would like us to try to get some kind of professional advice in the near future, in the next few months, so that we can decide what's the right level to be spending and what will help us to preserve the corpus for the next generations. So, I mean, I'm open to hearing what other members think. I think, I agree that we should at least fund the $60,000. I think we have the resources. Diane Ferrari does an amazing job, and over the 5 years I've been on the board, I know there have been times when we've had to go into executive session to hear requests because they've been confidential needs that were brought to our attention, and the cases are all very legitimate, and there are needs that are out there that are met through this purpose. So I'm definitely in favor of funding this. I just want to be sure that we have the right advice in place to keep this going well into the future.
I think
Mr.
that's a
Farren.
great suggestion. Yeah, I'd support that, Katie.
If appropriate, we'd be happy to be a resource to you in talking to those kinds of professionals.
Thank you.
If I could ask two, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, ask your question.
So I have two questions. In what state will $60,000 leave you? Will that will leave you at level funded for this year, and so you think you'll be able to provide the same level of services? Is that fair to
That-
say, or?
Yes, that would leave us at level funded for this year. The reason that the ask is higher than that, last year, the Governor Stoughton Fund, I think, gave us 15,000. So we're thinking 75, maybe to 80. Help Diane make additional distributions around the holidays, and also assist with the expenses related to an intern for the holiday gift program that we run for the town as well. And then to expand it beyond that, we get above 75 or 80,000, up to 100,000.
And then my second question is, would there be a mechanism, and this may be for the board and the trustees, whether there would be a mechanism for you to come back during the year, should there be a need, and ask for additional funding above the 60, perhaps when the trustees and the trust has determined how best to allocate those funds?
Sure, we'd be happy to come back at any time and provide reporting on how distributions are made, confidentially, anonymously, I should say, but yes.
So that may be the best way forward here, but that's my thought. Melinda?
I think Katie's suggestion about the 60,000 is a good one. I think that we do need a long-term plan, and I think I'd like to see personally some kind of also coordinated long-term plan. The funds at First Parish have been handling the administrative costs, and there was a point made that otherwise the town may be having to hire a social worker. So I think that's something to think about, but I think also coordinating some of these efforts and having a long-term plan in place also for how to use these funds well is really important. I also noted that you said that if there is an extraordinary need, that they're able to come back and present that in an executive session if it's an extraordinary need and it's an individual need that can't be shared with the public. So I think between those mechanisms, I think I would like a commitment from the board that we're going to move soon, as in now, to start getting opinions and advice on how to help this live into the future.
I agree with that.
I have one last question for you, Andrew. On that last slide, could you shed a little light on that one, the invoices from Murphy Hesse?
That's separate.
Oh,
That's the next
okay,
agenda.
okay, right on.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the
Nope,
question?
that's okay.
Okay.
Scratch that.
All right. Sorry.
All right, any other questions, comments, or thoughts?
No, we just would like to say thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And thank you, Katie, for your kind comments too, and the wonderful work that Diane has done. We're just mindful of the dollars, but she does the heavy lifting. So we just want to say thank you to her too.
The town's gonna miss Diane when she retires.
Yeah.
She's made a big difference, as
Yeah.
you
She sure
know, over
has.
the years, so
Yes.
She
we're
sure
all
has.
very grateful for her service.
Yeah, we're actively looking for her. I don't want to say replacement, but her next of kin, if you will, and successor. And we've got a handful of wonderful candidates, a few of which are from Milton, so we're pleased with that. So
Great,
we'll be working through that and expect to have that wrapped up by the end of this fall.
great. All right,
Thank you
so
all.
do we have a motion? You can stay here while we have our motion.
This is the good part.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve the request of the Milton Residence Fund in the amount of $60,000.
We have a second.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gray, Mr. Maloney, appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And so now, we will go and get the chair, so he can take his rightful place and take us through the rest of the meeting. 60.
Okay. We'll move quickly to item 3, which is a discussion approval on the relocation of the pest house. We have a proposed motion before us to approve the relocation of the pest house to the recommended location, which I believe is at the end of Governor Stoughton, just before
Correct.
the Arms House, the men's arms. Which side?
Right-hand side.
Okay. Mr. Denny, do we need any discussion? You want to add to this, or?
Just, Building Commissioner Joe Prondak handed this to me. He needs your permission and authority to move that building to that location before permits can be pulled for utility work that needs to take place. If you recall, it was up to the left down the end of Governor Stoughton. It's going to be moved to the right-hand side, across from the barn, if you will, just as you take the turn from Governor Stoughton at the top.
So one question I have, being familiar with this, once it's moved, is it going to be habitable for us to move on this, or is it going to need work? What's it going to need? Do we know what it's going to need?
It's going to need a little bit of TLC.
And at some point, we're going to be able to do something with it, either rent it as it was before, or,
Correct.
okay, so do I have a motion to approve the relocation of the pest house to the recommended location as articulated by the building inspector and the design by Pulte Trust? No motion?
No, I'll make the motion. Motion to approve the relocation of the pest house to the location indicated on the proposed site plan, that I think we'll probably have made part of the record.
Second.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? We're good? Everyone? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 4. Now, this is approval. This is going to be a reclassification of law bills. This is something that we've talked about for a little while now. And this will be to approve the reclassification of the law bills from Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane from the general fund to being paid from the Governor Stoughton Fund. So currently, the town has been paying the legal bills associated with the sale and purchase to
Correct.
Pulte, correct?
Yes.
And it is our understanding that this should have been coming from the Governor Stoughton Fund, which we now have funds to pay this. And so that is why this motion is before us tonight. So do I have a motion to move this reclassification?
Motion to approve the reclassification of the law bills from Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane from the general fund to being paid from the Governor Stoughton Trust Fund.
Can we add a friendly amendment just in the amount of $15,443.50, just so it's clear? What the amount is.
That's it?
$15,443 and how many cents?
Can you just repeat the number?
In the amount of $15,443.50,
50.
which is what's shown on our information sheet.
Do I need to read it again?
Nope.
Okay.
Second?
Seconded.
Can I just ask,
Sure.
so these bills have not yet been paid, we're just going to classify them and then pay them, or?
So they have been
they're
paid. They've
gonna
been
be
paid out of
reimbursed?
taxpayer dollars. What we're trying to do is recoup the taxpayer dollars from the Governor Stoughton Fund, since the purchase and sale has gone through, and that funding source is now available.
So it'll be a reimbursement to the town?
Yes, it's just a reclassification of the funds from the Governor Stoughton to this.
And
I
believe
will
this-
add, this is just fiscal year 18.
Right.
Myself and the town accountant are working with the auditors to figure out FY12 through FY17, which is an additional $24,000, roughly.
So if I'm correct, because there's no other placeholder, this has to go back to the general fund, correct?
We're working through that
All
with,
right, okay.
yeah,
All right,
with the town treasurer.
okay. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. At this time, I'll make a motion to adjourn the Governor Stoughton, the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Fund meeting, and we'll move into our regular meeting. And I'll begin with a motion to review and approve the minutes. So I'm looking at the proposal, motion to approve meeting minutes from April 2nd, May 2nd, May 14th, and May 29th, 2018 is written. Oh, go ahead. Yield to Secretary, I felt it on my writing.
Sorry. Yes, so we received some comments today on the 14th and 29th. So we will not be approving those today. We'll be incorporating those comments for approval at the next meeting. I just wanted to let people know, Katie Conlon and Tony Farrington and I actually went to Mass Selectmen Association's meeting. And it was great because there was the GA attended, or someone from the GA's office attended, and coached us on how to handle minutes. And the goal is to have minutes ready for approval within 3 meetings. So we're trying to clear up the little bit of a backlog, and then we hope to be doing that. So with that being said, we're hoping to see what would work for the board. Would it work for us to put a target date for you to get the minutes back to us with comments, or do people have suggestions about what might work for them? Because we don't want it to be an undue burden.
Well, I have to confess, I'm the one who sent the comments over today. I only
It
looked at them
happens,
last night.
right?
And my goal is really to make them shorter, to take out some of the detail that's in some of the sections, because I think that's easier for us all reading it, and I think that's all that's required.
Okay.
And I think and I know that's how that they used to be done. So, Emily takes very good minutes and keeps a lot of notes, but I just think that if we can keep them shorter, that would help. That would be the right way to approach the minutes.
Okay.
So a lot of my changes were just to delete some of the
Mhm.
detail that was in the minutes.
Well, that aside, noted. But just to make sure that we give people enough time, but would it be good to have a due date, or should we just say, now that people know that we're trying to do the best practice, that's enough? That's enough?
So I think so. I think if we can get the minutes, I know it's difficult, but if we could get them serially so that they don't all come on the Friday before the meeting, that may make it a little bit easier. And then we may be able to incorporate.
Right.
And I know that, I know that that's a challenge, but in other words, if we could, rather than having, and I think we're catching up now, but rather than having 4, all of a sudden, if we could get one,
Right.
maybe one a week, but I know that's a challenge.
Okay, well, it's
you know?
my understanding that they get sent, they get sent out, and then people send comments back, and then we work on them, and then they go out for approval at the meeting. So you're seeing them twice.
Oh, okay.
So it may be that people are missing them the first time around because they're not attached to an agenda packet.
Okay.
So, so just so you know, that happens. And that's what I was talking about giving, sending them out, because the board expressed an interest in actually making comments before we send them out with the agenda for approval. Do people still want that option?
Yeah, I think that would work. I just don't
Okay.
remember seeing the May 14th or 29th. The
Yeah,
April
and-
2nd and May 2nd I did, but I may have missed them.
Right.
But
Well,
I
I-
only noticed them in the package, so if Emily sent them earlier, my apologies.
Right.
Emily.
Oh, no, that's okay. We just want to get something that works for everyone. Okay, thank you. Appreciate
Does
it.
work for you?
I think we can make anything work.
All right, okay. Okay, so, did you just make a motion?
No, no motion made
Okay,
yet.
okay.
I just,
So, I know we jumped ahead on discussion. Do we have a motion to approve these meeting minutes from the dates articulated here?
well,
Do you want to add something else first?
we need to take 2 of the dates out. So motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 2nd, 2018, May 2nd, 2018, as written.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, the other one. Thank you, to Emily. Okay, item 3, let's confirm some future meeting dates. The board's scheduled to meet again on Monday, August 13th, and Monday, August 27th of 2018. I know it's vacation month. If anyone does have a conflict, if we just get it to Emily quickly. Okay, thanks. Item 4, citizen speak. I'm going to begin tonight only because this is my era as chair. There was, Mr. Farrington had sent me a request that he wanted to put on the agenda tonight. Some representatives from the National Grid Union who had asked to be on the agenda to speak to us tonight. So I'm going to begin with those gentlemen, and I apologize again for you not being on the agenda tonight. If you could just state your name and bring the microphone close, because the thousands are watching at home.
My name is Jamie Long. I live at 52 Church Street, Milton. I am a father of 5, and I am currently locked out of work by National Grid with no health insurance, along with 1,300 other union employees and 12 families in Milton affected by this. I sit with my colleague Joe Curlow, also representative. He's the president of 12003 at the Union Steelworkers, and we're here to request a moratorium on any unplanned work by National Grid in the town of Milton, non-emergency. We feel, and we can document if you like, there's numerous safety issues with the people that are doing the work while we're locked out. And going forward, we want to take a look at helping out the people of Milton with the safety issues. Offhand, this past Thursday, Antwerp Street, construction job going on. That's a water job, relaying water main. Part of the process is for National Grid to come out and mark out their facilities, top to bottom, gas mains and services. And this did not occur, resulting in 2 gas services to two separate houses and into the street being damaged with untold consequences that could have happened. This is in part due to the fact that the union body is not in doing the work, and it's been contracted out, and we feel that there's major safety issues here. If I could introduce Joe Curlow, he could help to speak as well.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd be so kind to allow me to speak just for a few minutes.
Of course.
I want to tell you that this is not a problem that just came about because we're locked out of work. Since 2011, I have written National Grid, the CEO, Steve Holliday, and the current CEO, John Pettigrew, the President of U.S. Operations, Tom King, and the current President of U.S. Operations, Dean Seaver, dozens of letters on safety. There's not a community in our 36 cities and towns that is not affected by what National Grid is not doing to protect the public. Out of all of those letters, I can tell you we've had 3 successes is what I would count. And just quickly, I would say they took our engineering department, which was the state-of-the-art engineering department. We had so many people retire through attrition that weren't replaced that I believe California Pizza had more people working for it than our engineering department. The work piled up to 55,000 pieces of work, mains, services, critical infrastructure of the United States, and it was outsourced to India. I wrote the top of the house in regards to this, and I tied it into domestic terrorism that took place on PG&E on the West Coast, and they returned the work in 3 days. They outsourced the work to Colorado, and then they said that this would never happen again. Last fall, it happened again. What I'm here to tell you was that National Grid is a broken company. They're computers that run all the vans that travel into Milton, and if there's a gas leak, they need to find the mains, the services. Well, the computers are down for 1 hour, 3 hours, 4 hours. Sometimes they're down for a whole day. Sometimes they're down for 3 days in a row. So it's impossible to find the mains to fix a leak or to mark out a main for an emergency dig safe. The things that are going on are just absolutely outrageous. We've had gas mains under fires, under steel plates on fire in Watertown from Friday till Monday due to the fact that they were tack weld. On 471 Tremont Street in Boston, we had 70 days to fix a gas leak with 40%, 50%, 60% gas under the plates. The fire department's coming in and out on a daily basis while we waited and had contractors fix it. I won't tell you too much. I don't want to eat up your time, but I will just tell you one other quick story. It's not a story, it's a fact. Down at 499 Commercial Street in Weymouth, the contractor came out. He marked a high-pressure main on the street, and he left. He was supposed to generate a ticket after marking out the mains to a foreign opening inspector that would come and watch the dig. He did not generate that ticket. By coincidence, one of our foreign opening inspectors drove down that street, and he realized that there was a contractor digging on the opposite side of the street on a 137-pound gas main. He pulled over. He said to him, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm getting ready to tap the water main. I'm putting a water service into this house." That man would have been killed instantly. The fire would have went halfway the height of the peninsula, and it would have made the Hyde Park Ave fire look like a candle. And when we went to the DPU as a union, we spent tens of thousands of our dollars of our own money, and we did not go there for wages, we didn't go there for pension, we did not go there for health insurance, we went over public safety. And when I brought up this specific incident at 499 Commercial Street, we had the Vice President, Dan McNamara, stand up and say that that main was not even damaged. We did discovery. 3 days later, they had to come back and admit that they lied in regards to what took place at 499. What I am telling you today is just the tip of the iceberg. And like I said, that's enough. I don't want to take all your time, but I appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, allowing me to speak.
Thank you. So we can't respond, unless, we have someone else for citizen speak tonight? If it's okay with the members, I think on both these items, maybe we'll move to item 16 first, is that all right? Which is citizen speak response, given the fact that there's not.
that makes a lot of
Is that all
sense,
right?
yeah.
Are we all right with that? So I'm gonna jump ahead to item 16, which will allow any of the members to respond to you. I don't think we can technically take a vote tonight because you weren't on the agenda, but I've already notified Mr. Nenny to place it on our next meeting for an actual vote. And I'll let Michael, when he wants to speak, talk about where we are already on requests for permits in the town with regard to National Grid.
Yeah, just very briefly,
Yep.
if I might, we had an interaction between our town engineer and Dennis McCaffrey about some work that we need done. Jamie, you're familiar with the project going on in East Milton Square on Adams Street. It's taken a real long time. The people of Adams Street have been very inconvenienced. There is some gas work that was to be done to follow up that water main reconnection there. That work is not going to be done until the labor dispute is resolved. So we have that commitment from them. And we're working with them to just handle some emergency stuff and stay away from the non-emergency work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the update. Thank you.
Mr. Farrington?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this to the attention of the board and allowing Jamie and Joe to speak. Technically, I don't think we can deliberate on this. I don't intend to, but I just want to echo some of your sentiments, which is, I think as a town, what's of primary importance to the board is the safety of the residents of the town of Milton and the general public. And God forbid, something should, occur in the way of a mishap due to the fact that, some of these stand-ins are less qualified or not as well trained as the veteran, 40-hour, 60, 80-hour week, every day in, day out union workers. So what we'll do, as Richard said, is we will get this on the agenda for next meeting. We'll deliberate on it. One question I have for you, I know, how are your efforts going in terms of some of the other supports that you've received from other towns?
The town of Braintree is unanimously gone on board 2 weeks
Okay.
ago. They've enacted a moratorium. The city of Boston is on board. The city of Boston City Council has put forward a resolution supporting the workers, but they're also drafting a resolution for the moratorium to stop all work that is unplanned. We also, go ahead.
I was going to say, along with Medford, Malden,
I've been following
Haverhill,
that.
Lowell, there's been a lot of towns that are getting on board in regards to public safety.
Okay. And you're actively negotiating with National Grid in terms of meeting with mediators, so on and so forth this week? I think you have
We
a
are
meeting
meeting
scheduled
with
this
them.
week?
We're meeting with them on Thursday, but to be honest with you, we're not making very good headway. They were just basically telling us to take their final offer, is what they're telling us.
Anybody else? Anyone? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming
We
in.
appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else for citizen speak? Good evening. If you just state your name and
Sure.
your address.
Yep,
Thank
good
you.
evening. I'm Christine Fisk. I live at 5 Columbine Road. And I want to thank you all for your service. I'm here tonight representing a group of concerned citizens in regard to the naming of the Board of Selectmen. And I'm here to request that the board include on the upcoming warrant an article to change the town bylaws to replace the name Board of Selectmen with Select Board and refer to selectmen as select board members. Over 40 other towns in Massachusetts have made the same wording change, and the change represents more gender neutrality. Recently, this change passed in Brookline. Michael Burstein, a town meeting member in Brookline, said it well when advocating for the change that recently passed. Changing how we refer to people in executive positions may seem like an unnecessary change, but perhaps it could help set an expectation that women are wanted and needed in positions of authority. Naming matters, and naming changes should change with the times. We call our fire department staff firefighters instead of firemen today. And in recent years, most militaries of advanced countries have changed the names from servicemen to more gender-neutral terms as well. In just 1 week, our group has collected over 100 signatures, probably actually closer to 150, during this busy summer month when a lot of folks are on vacation, asking for this matter to be put on the warrant by the Board of Selectmen. We would like the board the opportunity to show its commitment to gender equality by placing it on the warrant themselves. Collecting signatures has been such a great experience and has helped me and others understand just how many of my neighbors are invested and interested in improving access to public leadership for girls in this town. Many people said that we should actually propose changing the name to Board of Select Women, since the men have had a couple of 100 years already. And if you think this sounds ridiculous, I invite you to ask yourself why. Why would it feel odd as a man to be referred as Select Woman? I've also heard that people don't really believe that this is a big deal. A few years ago, Always ran a campaign called Run Like a Girl. When they asked people in their teens to run like a girl, they did a silly run, flipped their hair, and strutted. But when they asked young girls, well, the girls ran. They ran hard and they ran fast. After years of hearing that run like a girl means not competing and not going for it, and caring more about their hair than athleticism, that changes girls' perception of what it means to do something like a girl. I believe archaic terms like Board of Selectmen have had the same chilling effect and send the wrong message to women of all ages, especially those who are not yet accustomed to such dated terminology and expect more gender friendliness, like my 10 and 13-year-old daughters. Another argument that I've heard is that there are more important things to devote our time to. Well, this has been on the books since the 1700s, and I wonder when will be the right time. At the end of the day, this is really about access. I believe government runs best when people, regardless of gender, feel equally and are welcome to participate in public service. And finally, as my daughter reminded me in the car tonight, tradition used to be that women didn't vote. Thankfully, that tradition has changed. So we hope that you'll consider this change, and I'd be glad to share signatures with you if that's helpful.
You can
Thank
leave
you
them.
very much.
Thank you. Any comments? So this is on the agenda anyway, so we're going to come back to this. I do want to make one statement to you as the father and husband of female police officers. Just to give a correct a point, and no one, as you know, I spent my life in policing, and no one championed female police officers more than I did. I often refer to them as the greatest change in my 30-something years in policing. Firemen and policemen is what they are. Firefighter and police officer is the position they sit in. Those both terms have been around forever, and they still remain there today. No one changed. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, we changed the term from policeman to police officer, fireman to firefighter. Firefighter is like sergeant, lieutenant. Police officer and firefighter are the entry position, like a private in the Army when they come into the profession, but it's still, and it was my own wife, who currently is a deputy superintendent in the Cambridge Police Department, who reminded me of this the other day when she read one of the emails that referred to what you
Got
said.
it.
So
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Is that in Milton?
It's everywhere.
Okay, because
Everywhere.
I read otherwise online. I'd be happy to send you the
Everywhere.
articles.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a
Go ahead.
question. Christine, how many signatures do you have so far?
About 150. I was handed some as I walked in, so I don't have the exact count.
Great, good job.
So you can leave them. We'll take them. You
Great.
can leave them on this. You can leave them with Emily. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else for citizen speak? Thank you. So we're going to move to item 5, which is a quality report with Amy Dexter, our town accountant.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for coming in.
Sure. You just want me to start?
It's all yours.
Okay. So I'm here to report on the preliminary results for fiscal year 2018. The year ended June 30th, so we are in the very, very early stages of closing the books. So I'm going to give you a very top-level review of where we stand so far.
Can I ask, is it good or bad before we move
Oh,
any
it
further?
was
Is
fine.
it good?
It's good. So For fiscal year 18, the total general fund budget was approximately $106 million. As you all know, this included a $3.1 million override. Preliminary results show that there were no unusual budgetary deviations. General fund revenues exceeded our estimates by approximately $1.2 million. This was mainly due to motor vehicle excise tax collected in excess of the estimate of $600,000, and licenses and permits, which is basically the building permits, of about $300,000 more than we budgeted. General fund expenditures came in about $200,000 less than the appropriation by town meeting. That was mainly due to new positions funded with the override that weren't filled immediately on July 1st, as well as some turnover and movement within departments where people transferred to another department and their positions took a while to fill. In addition, the town clerk had an appropriation for public record software that came in significantly below budget. The last item making up a portion of the $200,000 related to veterans benefits that came in less than appropriated. On another good news front, the stabilization funds total approximately $4.6 million at June 30th, with an additional contribution to those funds of about $654,000 that will be made in FY19, bringing the total balances to approximately $5.2 million.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
Where do you get that 654 from? Where does that number come from?
So that was appropriated at the May town meeting. $354,000 of it went into the capital stabilization fund, of which about $250,000 related to savings on the LED project, and then the rest of it was funds from free cash.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. On the trust funds, the OPEB trust is approximately $1 million at the end of the fiscal year. The Affordable Housing Trust is $51,000, so we've made some progress there, and we'll hopefully continue to fund that trust. The reserve fund, there were only 2 transfers out of the reserve fund to supplement budgets. The first one was about $1,000 to the municipal audit. It came in a little bit more because of the OPEB valuation came in a little above what we had budgeted. The remaining $248,000 that came out of the reserve fund went to cover a portion of the snow and ice deficit. And then there was some funds in there related to the demolition of the old Henry's property. That was transferred at the May town meeting to the FY19. We, actually not to FY19, we transferred it to a capital fund so that we could pay for the costs out of there. That will roll over to 19 so that we can further pay for the demolition mitigation costs. The last item I wanted to report on is the snow and ice deficit. We ended the year with a deficit of approximately $559,000. The total budget for snow and ice was only $160,000, so we spent somewhere around $720,000. We were able to cover that deficit so that we will eliminate the need to raise the funds in 19 by, as I mentioned earlier, $248,000 transfer from the reserve fund, a year-end transfer from the employee benefits appropriation of $72,000. The group insurance came in under budget. $22,000 related to the town clerk software project that came in under budget. And the remaining $217,000 was covered by savings in the DPW department, mainly related to savings in the streetlights, again, the LED project, as well as some savings in overtime that we didn't need to expend. So that's it in a nutshell, but if you want me to get into more specifics.
Open the floor, any questions?
How much did the
Farrington?
GIC come in under budget?
Well, we're not
Not
in
in
GIC, but the health benefits overall came in about 72,000 under budget, so we transferred all of that to snow and ice. That budget's a big nut. It's, I think I couldn't even tell you the total, somewhere north of 10 million.
Well, to
So-
quote a former warrant committee chair sitting at this table, who was the first person that I ever heard refer to healthcare as budget buster.
It is, so
I think a lot of
that
people
was
said
You're the
pretty
first one I
close.
remember.
Yeah, that budget came in very close. So we were fortunate that we were able to cover all of this snow and ice deficit.
Anyone else?
Can I just add a
Sure.
couple of, a huge thank you to Amy and her team in the accounting office, treasurer's office, Jim McAuliffe and his group. This was a very transitional year. We had some positions that went unfilled, and we had some people that retired or moved on. There wasn't an office in Town Hall that wasn't in transition at one point in time, so all of these efficiencies that you see were done through the great coordination of the department heads. If there's a number that is associated with the town or a department, Amy can usually pull it right off the top of her head. If not, Eileen or Nancy or Lisa in the office do. So I just want to compliment them and the department heads for running a very, very efficient operation this year. So
So noted.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Zulus. Go ahead.
Just a couple of things, Amy. I think I heard you say we were 1.2 million to the good on revenues
Mhm.
and 200,000 to the good on expenditures.
Mhm.
So that's 1.4. And did the 559 to cover the snow and ice come out of the 1.4 million?
No, it was already factored into the numbers. So that was after the snow and ice was covered,
So we're
the 200.
so we're still 1.4 to the good for the year.
Yes, preliminary.
Preliminary. And preliminary. Got it.
The audit's scheduled to start August 20th, so I don't like to get too specific until, we've been through that. That lasts about 2 weeks. So, yeah, at this stage of the game, it looks really good.
I'll defer
Yeah.
my question of free cash then. And,
Yeah, because that, just to be clear, just because we're turning back 200 and we've collected in excess of revenue, that does not translate to free cash necessarily. It's my starting point for free cash.
Right. And then,
So,
and then one other question, how much is do you know how much is in the reserve fund today?
zero. We
Zero.
used it
Zeroed
all
out.
because we transferred whatever was left to snow and ice.
You referring to 19 or 18?
19 actually, so
I think he's
zeroed
referring
out.
to
Well, so
start.
19,
Zeroed out,
Okay.
yeah, that's right.
yeah, so 19 is at, I think we appropriated 250,000, so
250, right.
usually nobody comes looking for a transfer out of there until the last 60 days of the year end. So unless something completely extraordinary happens, we try to absorb expenses within the departmental budgets whenever possible.
Great. Thank you.
I'm assuming that the 248 was transferred when we delegated the authority to the chair to approve reserve fund transfers. 'Cause we
Yes.
didn't act on that, so,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
And I don't
that
think
was-
I think I saw, might have seen one. It was all moving from personal under, what's the chapter? What's the chapter that
So
allows you to use?
I don't know the
can't
exact
remember. I should know it. I
definition,
used
but
to know
it's
it by heart.
chapter 44, section, I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's a law, Mass General law, that allows you in the last 60 days of the fiscal year to transfer from either one, salary and wages to general to salary and wages within your departmental budget, or you, now with municipal modernization, you can transfer from one department to another. It used to be limited to 3% of your budget, that you couldn't transfer in or out any more than that. But with the municipal modernization that went through a couple years ago, that cap was eliminated. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility to manage things like the snow and ice deficit. So it's very helpful.
Thank you. Anything else? Mrs. Collins, anything? Good. So I just have one question.
Mhm.
Anything on the radar for 19 that might be causing you to lose any sleep at all at night now?
Any-
Is there anything like?
No, I
are there-
hope
yeah,
not.
Are there any potholes out there that we need to know about? Oh, go ahead.
So trash and recycling costs are,
Okay.
are going to go north.
And
That's
that
a
expires
fact
this
of
year,
life.
correct?
We're good through June 30th of 2019. Solid Waste Advisory Committee has already met once. We're considering potentially renegotiating the contract the way it stands now, putting a one-year contract out to see how it settles out, or entertaining another 5-year contract. But we've been warned.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, we did see those increases in FY18. And again, we were fortunate enough to cover some of those increases by savings from like the streetlights. That was huge, and that will also have impact on 19, but we've already factored that in to the budget process when we did the 19 budget.
Okay.
But no, to answer your question, other than that, we did a pretty good job, I hope, budgeting for FY19, and we, tried to anticipate anything such as those increases. I know we factored in some of those because Chase had identified that issue before the budget process was finalized. So I believe we, as of right now, nothing that concerns me for FY19.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Those bumps come up, they just, maybe we can get them out there early. All right, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Item 6, we have a discussion approval of a potential possible East Milton Square 40-hour working group. You can come and speak, Mr. Cochran? Mr. Cochran is here representing Falcone. I know I've sent a couple of correspondence to Mr. Dennehy to share with the board members from conversations I've been having with the chair of the planning board over the past week or so. And at this point, I'll open the floor to Mr. Cochran and Mr. Falcone. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm here with Bob Falcone, who is, with his 3 sisters, is the principal with the Falcone Companies and the proponent for a project. I forwarded to you, and I'm just going to show you briefly, a revised set of floor plans that show some adjustments that we've considered since the joint meeting we were at about 5 weeks ago. And that really goes to, it doesn't go to necessarily to the scale of the building, but we have reallocated space between units and square footage for office space. So in particular, the first floor essentially remains the same. There's office retail at the Bassett Street side, and bedroom apartments on the Bassett Street level. Here, there's a lower level of a garage that you enter from Franklin Street and go down, and an amenities lobby, and then a courtyard with green open space and amenities for both residents and for the neighbors. Next, if we can get to a next.
Sorry.
The next floor would show, again, over the Bassett Street side, proximate to Adams Court, is office retail. Office retail on the Adams Street level, along the Adams Court side, bedroom apartments here and over on the Franklin Street side, again with the courtyard and the next level of the parking, with the main parking, the entrance to and from, exit and entrance to the parking in and out at the upper level of Franklin Street, away from Bassett Street, where the existing entry to the parking lot is now. Next. So the real change is here. There were 6 apartments here initially, that on the second level above Adams Street, and it seemed to us that that was more appropriate for office space, and so we've taken 6 apartments away and adjusted that to office space. That takes the unit count from apartments perspective from 64 to 58. And we did a couple of other things up top to sort of reduce some scale, to eliminate another bedroom. And if we go further along, I'll show that. This is the 3rd floor over Adams Street. There's no, the changes here really are some roof decks, area, some outdoor living space on the, above the roof of the portions of the building over Bassett Street. Here, the building has stepped back in each case from Bassett Street. And then finally, the fourth floor, we've pulled the building back over Adams Street. Initially, this was a two-bedroom unit right out to the edge of Adams. We've pulled that back and reduced that to one bedroom. So the number of apartments has gone from 64 to 58, and the number of bedrooms has gone from 90 to 80. Otherwise, the building remains substantially as shown. We haven't re-rendered it. We haven't remodeled it as say, but I think if there are sort of four major issues that I can think of, one being traffic. Traffic, you know, we're proposing to be involved in the traffic solution for East Milton. Parking, we're proposing to overpark the building substantially. Unit count, apartments in particular, I think was an issue. That we've gone from 50 back to 64, sort of brought that number back down into the 50s. And then the last item, which I think is the one that's potentially the least solvable, is the height. And the height remains the height. That won't change. And so I thought at least to show new thinking, I did provide a comparison table to you and to the planning board that shows the evolution of the project as it was originally contemplated almost a year ago, right through adjustments to the 40R, proposed 40R plan that we've now proposed or are proposing at this point. We are before the planning board on Wednesday, and we are really hopeful that this board and the planning board agree to step into a process with us as soon as possible, so that we can figure out as soon as possible whether there is a political opportunity to get to a January special town meeting. And I'll open it up to questions and comments.
Any questions? So I have a comment myself to the board members, not so much to either of you, based on the conversations I've had with the chair, Cheryl Tagayas, as well as also with Bill Clark and Cheryl Tagayas today, and Lauren. So instead of us approving a motion tonight, I think what I'd like to do is, she and I would like to meet with the East Milton leadership and garner from them some of their additional concerns, and potentially propose what I've said to you, which would be potentially a joint working group between the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, and concerned citizens of the town. But that has some questions in itself. First off, what do you think of that? Is that something that, the second thing that Cheryl had mentioned to me today was, you know, if you have two members from each board, are they speaking, are they representing their board, are they representing their own views? And I thought that was a good point there. So I think the one thing that I continue to get from the neighborhood is still about size and scope, and I think, and I've said this to both Bob and to you in the meeting that I've been in, that I think to have dialogue and input is very important. And I think from the planning board's point of view, the other thing is, do they wish to accept 40R? And I think that's the first before we go anywhere, I think we need to see, is it gonna be embraced? And would the neighborhood embrace it? So, at least from my perspective, I'm willing to initiate that discussion with them to try and bring the people to the table that need to be here, and to be here to meet with you as well. And I welcome any of your thoughts, comments, any of you that, and it doesn't even have to be tonight, because I don't think we're ready to vote this right tonight. I don't think we are, based on just the two things of comments I've had today. after long conversations with the planning board chair. I'm looking more for input than I think a decision at this point, if that's okay.
Yeah, the email that came over today, this
'Cause they
afternoon.
differ. They definitely differ. Yeah, they differ.
I got it this afternoon, and it was, Cheryl spent a lot of time on it, and she raised a lot of good points, and she raised a lot of questions, I think, that personally I need to reflect on a little bit. So I want to wade through that and give it the due diligence that it deserves, rather than make a hasty decision. I tend to be in favor of a working group, generally speaking, but the makeup of it and the specifics of it, I think, are extraordinarily important, and Cheryl touched upon those in that email.
She did.
So,
And the other thing is, if we do, I don't think, at first Cheryl thought it should be the two of us, and now I think we both agree it shouldn't be, so I think amongst the four of you need to decide which two want to be on it. Or do we want two? Do we want one, or do we want, so I guess at this point, I don't want to deliberate on it, but I'm thinking I'd welcome any suggestions from each of you. Is that all right if we don't do this tonight, but I'd rather do this sooner versus later, because I did reach out to Peter Dunn today to schedule a meeting between Cheryl and I and them, sooner versus later, to begin some active dialogue in this. The one thing that I do worry about, and she does as well, is that I think we've learned from the history here, we need community involvement, community input to get to a resolution. I think we have to do that. Not everyone may be happy, but I think with community input and dialogue, I think we come closer to getting something better for our community. And I think, I've taken my fair share of agita because I live in the neighborhood from this, but I've come to learn a lot about it, just in these few short months. So, if it's okay with you, that I'm more inclined to seek input, and then I believe she's going to do the same thing on the planning board side. They have a lot more expertise in the zoning aspect of this than we do. Even though we may be the chief elected body, I'll be the first one to say, from my background, I may understand the parking and the traffic issues of East Milton, but I don't know anything about building at all, and I wouldn't presume to. And just in my conversations with Cheryl and her background in architecture and design, it's like she talks in a language that I was completely unfamiliar with, but I've come to greatly appreciate it, and she has other members of her committee that also have an expertise. So I'm willing to listen to the four of you, and I will move forward whatever you guys think. But that's, if you like the concept of the working group, then that's what I'd like to propose, or Cheryl and I would like to propose to, at least is part of it. I think we should also include the chamber. They're as big a part of the square as let them have some dialogue in this as well. And I just don't think that these huge meetings have been productive at all, and I think getting people to the table that have constituency and can get the message out and can communicate good and bad is a way to get something better for this community, or get the best possible we can for the community.
May I
Sure.
respond? So I wholeheartedly endorse the process of a working group. We spent a significant amount of time through last winter in a lot of meetings trying to get to something that we could agree to. Didn't quite get there. I think it's important to re-engage that process, but we can't do it simply with the neighborhood. So having said that, the way I guess the way I see things running out, your next meeting is August 13th.
Right.
And then the 27th. Planning board is meeting Wednesday and doesn't meet again until August 23rd. We have a big presentation coming before the planning board that night for the Carberry development.
On the 23rd?
On the 23rd. We're running hard to prepare to file a formal application for special permit by August 31st so that we can start a public hearing at the end of September. And that will engage a lot of time and effort from the planning board as we move forward on that. I know that, January gets here really fast. And November or December, when you close that warrant, gets here really fast.
Right.
And there's a lot of figuring out that has to happen in a reasonably short period of time to figure out whether we can get to a warrant article in December and a special town meeting in January.
It could be February, though, too. It may not necessarily, in our conversation with Mr. Hess, it could be February, not January, but that's just, I mean, we're doing everything we can to, but, as you know, there's a lot of emotion in this. There really is, and I hear that, and I get that, and
I completely understand that. We hear it daily.
We do as well.
We understand. But at the end of the day,
you're trying to get to a
we're
resolution.
trying to get to a resolution on a project that we're capable of building.
I get that.
And we want to engage as much as we can in a process that arrives at either a determination that we can get to yes or a determination that we can't get to yes, so that we make decisions on which way to go.
So the only other caveat I would add to that is, I'm not, Cheryl and I both, and we've done this, we've had joint meetings, we've had our share of joint meetings on this already. We're not opposed if we get to a place where we have positive dialogue and momentum going. We're not opposed to having another joint meeting. We're not opposed, I mean, we're here to serve the community, so that, I mean, as you've seen from our history, we've done this in the past. Just because what's on the calendar now does not mean we would not necessarily schedule another meeting.
I
just to
understand.
deal with
I
this.
understand that, and if this board and the planning board decide to put together a working group, our hope was that you would kick off as soon as possible after the decision is made to create it, and run into a productive set of meetings that we would participate in, and try to arrive at an outcome. Our concern is that we started initial presentations in May, with joint meeting in June. We didn't make either board 2 weeks ago, and now, we're having preliminary dialogue tonight and Wednesday about maybe a process that would involve maybe a joint committee. And so we're now 8 weeks post our public start, and lots of dialogue going on in between. And there's no sense that there's going to be, that we're stepping into anything. And I'm trying to create some urgency on behalf of both boards so that we don't lose the opportunity to take advantage of an outcome that wants to work for everybody.
I get that. But my response to you was in this, you had a process that was moving forward, and it exploded into that last East Con, I think we can all agree, and that kind of blew a big hole, blew up any bridge that was being built. And at the meeting that we brought to your office to try and, there was a lot of catharsis to try and start to put that bridge back together between the community and yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. There's nothing easy in this. It's not comfortable. People walk by your house and you can tell by the way they're looking at me what they're thinking. But it's not easy sitting here. But in the end run, we represent the community. We have to do that, and I think we're trying to do that and trying to be as reasonable as we can. I get what you're trying to do, and I think all of us here are trying, and speaking for Cheryl and her board as well, we're trying to, as I say, I'm not telling you that if we need to call a meeting, we'll call a meeting. I'm committed to that, and she is as well, and you've seen that by history. We'll do that. So I just think, given where we're at right now, and I've had a lot of conversations with her and spent a lot of time in the past 4 days talking to her about this, I think that's the best way to move right now. I don't think that the members that are here before you are against a working group. I think they want to do something that's in the best representation of the community that elected them and the people they serve. Does that say it? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, I agree. I've been saying before I was sitting up here that it's important to have other people in the room who can help with the process. And as Tony Farrington said, it would be good to work through some of these questions and have some agreement between the two boards, because this could be the start of something that is we use going forward as a town, but also we don't want to add to the difficulties. There are enough at this point, along with, I don't want it to say that there are no good things that are coming out of this or possible. I want us all to keep in mind that there are good intentions all around.
And I get that as well. I think we all get that. You
Yeah.
know, we get that. So, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say, so in term, if you're soliciting views, if it'd be helpful, I can tell you my thought as
ahead.
we sit here, and that is, I favor a working group. I favor 2 members from this board, 2 members from the planning board. I'm less concerned that less than a quorum would speak on behalf of a board, so I would favor a working group with 2 from this board, 2 from the planning board. Up to 3 from the neighborhood, and perhaps 1 from the Chamber of Commerce. And that's my thought as we sit here.
Okay.
I agree with Mike's approach, but I think, Richard, your idea about you and Cheryl meeting with the neighborhood is all, to start this,
Yeah.
is also a good idea. So I support your proposal.
Anybody else?
Well, Ned, I think that we all understand and we're sympathetic to one of the points that you raised, or that Cheryl raised in her email, which was these meetings tend to get hijacked by perhaps the most vocal group, and they dissuade perhaps other opinions or other viewpoints, and it spirals and it becomes lopsided, and it doesn't become a dialogue that perhaps is representative of all viewpoints. I think we're sympathetic to that, we understand it, but I don't think you can just eliminate this dialogue format altogether. I think we can put some, if we identify a format.
I'm not asking to eliminate any of that. I'm encouraging you to
Right.
jump into it. Completely the opposite. All we've said is we won't meet just with the neighborhood.
Okay, all right. I think if we give it some structure and if we give it some format, I think it's gonna be more productive.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with all of that. And I think Mike's suggestion about the nature of the committee is right on. I've thought a lot about it. I just think that we just want to see you get started. If it takes 3 months to get through that process, that's fine, because we're all working together. But if we never get started, we're going to run out of time to get started.
I hear you.
And that's the issue.
Look, I'm only going to say this one last time. We've been in this up to our neck since you came forward with this. I mean, I don't even know how many conversations. But there's a lot of, I mean, you know this,
I know.
but there's a lot of heartache there, and there's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of concerns. And the 40R concept may be a brilliant concept for this project, but I don't think, I speak for myself, I don't think I have the expertise. It's definitely caught my attention. It's definitely something that, as it was first proposed to me by one of my neighbors who's an East Milton person who knew, I think it's caught the planning board's attention, but I think that has to be part of the discussion as well. We want, because I know that if it's no, you're gonna go with a plan B. I get that. You don't even have to say it. Are you gonna try a plan B? And so that puts you into an even longer, and it's my hope that we can come to something mutual here.
Well, I mean,
hope.
the last proposal we had was a 10% alternative based on
Right, I get
a
that.
straight zone.
I get
That's not off the table.
We'll
it's a
deal with all the, I
that's-
think all
that's-
this will get flushed out as we go forward.
Right.
I do think that.
And so again, all I'm asking is that you collectively get started.
Okay. We're not gonna waste a lot of more, I mean, and I'll just reiterate one more time. If we have to call special meetings to deal with this, we'll do that. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 7, I'll discuss with the Municipal Broadband Committee their request for proposal. Thank you. You still on this committee?
Hi, Joe.
You still on this?
Hello,
Steve, come up and join him.
Chairman Wells, the rest of the board, thank you for having us. I just want to do just a quick, very brief recap of where we are in this process. The town is in the midst of negotiating the Comcast franchise agreement right now. Comcast has indicated that they're not going to be supporting the institutional network, which of course is crucial to town and school data and communication operations. At our last, at a June meeting, the Broadband Committee came to you and we recommended, in light of what's going on with Comcast, that the town pursue the creation of our own town-owned and controlled institutional network. That's just as backdrop, or as a recap of why we're here tonight. We're here tonight to present our request for proposal, where the Broadband Committee wrote a first draft. We've submitted it already to Mike Dennehy and his staff, Arlene Zuniger, the Chief Procurement Officer, and they are finalizing the draft right now. So this presentation right now, it's going to be pretty short and sweet, really just an overview of what's in the RFP, and essentially what we're asking. So what the town will be seeking from qualified respondents is to create what we call a high-level study to describe the scope of work to construct a new fiber optic institutional network for the town. So long and the short of it, the RFP is for a study. The RFP outline is very straightforward. It's almost no different than any other RFP that the town is familiar with, or Mike Dennehy's staff is familiar with. We introduce, give a little background about Milton. We give some general RFP information, and then the meat of the RFP is actually outlined in the project scope and criteria. So if you could just click to, yeah, right there. So this is the meat of the RFP. This is what we're asking qualified respondents to give us in a report. And by the way, just a quick note on qualified respondents. There are engineering firms out there, consulting firms who build fiber optic networks. It's a broad and well-populated, if that's the right word, industry. There's lots of experts out there who we can issue this response for proposal to. So what we're asking for is, first and foremost, an evaluation of the town's current network capabilities. I'm not going to go into detail on all of these points. Certainly, if I can answer any questions afterwards, I'll try to do that. But this first step is crucial in that it will give the town a clear picture of all of our current capabilities, our current infrastructure, our current physical plant when it comes to our data and communication needs. Not only the institutional network, which is what we're talking about specifically in the RFP, but also other systems that we have in town that are controlled and maintained by the town, traffic signals, being one, the fire alarm system, the police alarm system. So what we're looking for from in this RFP right out of the gate is just an in-depth and assessment of where we are today when it comes to our data and communications capabilities. Second, we'd be asking for, in the report, a high-level needs assessment, and that is more functional in capabilities, not only how the INET is being used today and some of these other communication networks that we have in town are being used today, but also how we would like them to be used. Not only kind of short-term capabilities that we're looking for, but longer term as well. And the third thing that we're going to ask for is an assessment of the town's right to use the utility poles in the town. All of the utility poles in town right now are owned by either Verizon or EverSource, and this part of the RFP, we believe on the committee, on the broadband committee, is absolutely crucial. Not only to deploying the network, because we'd be using these poles to actually string the wires, but also cost. We were told by a number of experts in our research that the issue of access to poles, attachment fees to poles, anything to do with utility poles, if you don't own them, are far and away the biggest part of constructing a fiber optic broadband network. So that will be a crucial piece of what we're asking for.
Just one quick, is that because you have
Yes,
to pay them?
sorry.
Is that because you have to pay them a fee because you don't own the pole?
Yeah, in municipalities where you don't own the poles, and we actually learned this from Leverett, our friends at Western Mass who were guests of the committee. You basically rent attachments, and they are very detailed, and it's pole by pole by pole with a dollar amount attached to each one, and it's not a one-time charge. It can be an ongoing, like a rent. So that's why we believe that this piece is so crucial. When we say item 3, assessing the town's rights to utility poles, that we have a history, municipalities have a history of having rights to the space on those poles. Right now, we use that space, for instance, for our fire alarm system. And these are historical rights going back to the very beginning of when poles were first put up, literally at the turn of the century. So that would be, that is just something that we absolutely have to know going in order to assess our capabilities, or really to assess the cost of building such a network. I'm not going to go into detail on the remaining items here. A lot of these are kind of pro forma type RFP subject areas. We will ask for some business model options, basically how to run, maintain, and maybe even fund our network. Construction costs, of course, and a construction schedule we'll be asking for. I do want to circle back, though, on item 5, and I will end this presentation with that one. The high-level network design. This, we were also advised by many of the experts who came in to address the committee over the spring when we had our public meetings, is another crucial step in the planning process. Obviously, when you go to build a network, you need a network design. That's kind of an obvious thing to say. But in the planning phase, which is, what we're just starting right here, to have a high-level design that's not exactly, a blueprint, it's not super detailed, but gives enough information to allow the engineering experts to explain how they want to build it, what they want to build, what sort of capabilities we can have, basically on a map that they can share with people. So the RFP that we're asking for is that we're going to ask respondents to fill out will help us, we believe, we meaning the Broadband Committee, will help us not only to begin the planning of this institutional network, an obvious necessary first step, but we also believe that it will be beneficial in the Comcast negotiation. We can't predict how. We just don't know. Comcast seems to hold their cards close in their deliberations with us. But we do feel that time is of the essence, that that the sooner that the town of Milton has this study in hand, and we see the path forward that we can take with building this vital communications infrastructure, that it will be beneficial not only for their for the town's operations for the foreseeable future, but also in the immediate next 3 months. And I just did the little math here. That's when the franchise agreement ends, which is mid-October. So we do think that this is a a necessary first step, obviously, but that time is of the essence, and that this will really help us plan our institutional network. So, Steve?
In the context of this meeting, you asked what potential potholes could be in the road, and Mr. Dennehy mentioned one, but this is a potential significant pothole, because if the current network should fail and needs to be replaced sooner, we're talking
Significant money.
pretty significant pothole. If the utility pole situation isn't completely understood, that's an ongoing expense that the town needs to anticipate in the budgeting process. And in the negotiations, Comcast, from my understanding, Mr. Dennehy and Mr. Zulus know better than I do, but the premise is that Comcast wants to
Walk
get out
away.
of this
Right.
and wants to help fund the transition. But the cost of the transition is highly speculative at this point. And so the notion of trying to really quantify that, I think, would be invaluable for the negotiation. And the cost of the proposed study is very modest in comparison to some of the potential benefits of we're talking in the $30,000 to $35,000 range, which is a pittance compared to some of the
Right.
potential.
If they discontinue the iNet system.
Well, I don't think the issue is as much of them immediately discontinuing. I think there's a bigger risk of it failing.
Right, because it's near the end of its
Well,
technical.
so I mean,
Right.
we don't think it's happening tomorrow, but
But it's yesterday's technology,
It's-
not tomorrow's.
That
Right.
that is true.
it's
Yes.
not a new piece of technology. But the costs and how much to string and how to do it. We have some very, very basic estimates, and I think our committee would feel much more comfortable if those estimates were reviewed by real experts who do this all the time and come back to the town and say, it's not $160,000, it's some other
$500,000,
amount.
right.
So I just think this is good business for the town to do this, and some of the firms that we've interviewed are very impressive, and we think they could really make a big benefit. And we Would you agree, Mr. Zulus?
Yes, yes, I would. Yeah, no, I mean, just to elaborate on what Steve said, you know, from the purposes of the discussions with Comcast, this would be very helpful information. And it seems to me we have a timing problem because we have a contract that is coming due in 3 months. We're going to begin negotiations in earnest very soon. We have this committee, the Broadband Committee, has suggested a study that could cost about $30,000, which I don't think is in the budget right now. I think their view is, correct me if I'm wrong, that that study would take 2 to 4 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks.
It'll depend on what we ask for, but
Right.
yes.
Under the current RFP.
Yeah, the current RFP, we've been advised.
So ideally, you know, if we had something at the beginning of September, that would be helpful, but I don't know if that's possible, given the fact that we don't have an allocation. So that, to me, the question is timing and whether there is a way to get a budget allocation in advance of May 2019 for this. So that's to me, that's the question.
Could we ask for an RFT? Could we ask for an RFT to do this? We could.
Good, yeah.
Yep.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and the first look today by, actually on Friday by Arlene Zuniga, and thank you for the work. The work that this committee has done is just, it's truly, you can't, I mean, Steve put it into words slightly, but the cost of, and the burden of Comcast potentially walking away from the system and the RFP to study this is invaluable. The good news that came out of her first review of it, that something that's $35,000 is just 3 quotes. It's not something that has to go out for a request for proposals. It's literally we get 3 quotes from qualified consultants that do this, and it sounds like there's a lot in that industry, qualified, experienced. And I don't think Milton's alone. I think if they're going to walk away from this feature in Milton, that they'll be doing it in other communities as well. So I think that it's invaluable that this first step. So I appreciate all the work that was done to get it to here.
Well, and I would add to that, first of all, Joe has done a remarkable job with this, but we turned this over to Mr. Dennehy and Arlene on Thursday, I believe, and they jumped into this with both feet and have done a remarkable job of responding. So I'm very impressed with how they've taken this.
So if I'm correct, we can put out the RFP, we just need an appropriation to pay for whoever is awarded the bid, correct?
Right.
You thinking just 3 quotes? You don't think you need to go out to bid?
No, 3 quotes,
What, under 50?
under 50, yeah,
Yeah.
which is where we think it's going to come in. So
So,
we needed Amy Dexter to stay a little longer.
I was just I looked around the room, I'm like, where did Amy go?
Right.
So do you need a motion to allow them to put this RFP out, or can you direct that on your own?
I'd prefer for town council to take a look at it tomorrow, now that Arlene has kind of put her fingerprints on it, and then it should be turned around just as quickly as Arlene taking a look at it.
Okay. And I think we'd be more than receptive to finding a monetary solution to financing once you get an RFP back, once you get quotes back. I think timing, though, going to what Mr. Zulus says, getting that RFP out sooner versus later, and then giving us the time to find, it's not an exorbitant amount of money, it's relatively small. I think in the long run, particularly in light of the Comcast negotiations, it only can help us all going forward. Is that okay with you guys? Is that amenable to you?
That sounds fantastic to us.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody? Questions? I don't think a lot of people understand this. You know, they turn on their TV, they turn on their computer, they don't understand how critical infrastructure is. I get where you're at, and I greatly appreciate it, because you're really paving a path, not for today, but for tomorrow and beyond, and it's very important.
Thank you.
Thank you
Well,
both.
thank you for your work.
Okay, item 8. I'm going to start a discussion of the 2018 special town meeting articles. I'm going to begin by asking Chief King to join us. He's been waiting patiently back there tonight. Good evening.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Chief.
Hi, Mike.
I
sent along a proposal that has to do with appointing special officers. The situation basically is looking for a bylaw to give us the ability to appoint retired Milton police officers to do details. And just the reason behind this is basically the problem's kind of common sense. We consistently have a high number of unfilled details. That's not a current trend. That's been the case since I came on that department as a cadet in 1992, and it's existed every year. You know, construction tends to be seasonal work, short of emergencies, so you have a lot of projects all at one time, you know, and you just can't get enough officers to fill it. So what happens now is a combination, either they go unfilled or we give those details to other communities. So that's the problem. So the solution, you know, I feel, and I think others feel this way, is, you know, if we were to appoint retired police officers who worked here in town, we're tapping a resource that's kind of rich in training, knowledge, and experience. Officers that, you know, arguably worked here 30-something years. They know our policies, they know our procedures, they're more accountable to us than if I give that detail away to a neighboring community. And this is the trend. There's well over 200 departments in the state have already done this, and that count was over a year ago. So, you know, I can't give you today's count, but it was over 200 communities in the Commonwealth over a year ago. Locally, every department around us, Canton, Randolph, Quincy recently did it, Braintree, Weymouth, Boston Police has recently done it. It just hasn't been fully implemented, but they've passed the bylaw at the city council there. So, you know, the benefits, you know, the number one is public safety. You know, there's more uniform officers on the street in our community. There's more traffic control during these construction areas. And, you know, sometimes people think of details as like a negative, and that's not the situation at all. As recent as a week or two ago, I got calls, I know Mike Denny got calls about traffic issues. You know, Squantum Street was a major project. On a weekday, we had no detail officers at it. Multiple days during the same week, Adams Street project between Quincy and East Milton there. One day we tried to fill 3 jobs, one Randolph person took it, nobody else. So that officer just going to a bathroom or even getting a lunch break, that's an unattended detail on one of the busiest thoroughfares in town. Another day, we couldn't fill it. People were just driving anywhere they wanted. Numerous residents were calling me. So, you know, that's a recent problem, but that's a consistent problem throughout different parts of town, different times of the year. So, you know, I also can say, not just in my role as chief, and I know Chief Wells had the same problem, but even as deputy chief, it wasn't uncommon for me to receive calls from the DPW director in advance. I still get those calls, whether it's from Chase, I used to get them from Joe Lynch, John Thompson saying, hey, can you help us next week on this project? We really need details. We're working at Canton and Brook, school's open, it's gonna be a nightmare and nobody's been taking it. And what's happening is some of the contractors don't work, which either holds up the project or creates an expense for the town. So I think adding a number of officers would help the town in that way. There is a small financial benefit to the town. The town gains a 10% fee on all details. So currently, if we give those details, which we do to, you know, Quincy, Randolph, Canton, and whoever else, the town does not collect that. In this case, the town would offer a retiree. So I drafted a bylaw and I submitted it to Mike, who I'm sure has forwarded to you. And, you know, it basically is, it's a pretty concise document. It's pretty short. It basically, you know, I'm happy to answer questions, but it goes over the appointment process, the eligibility. There's a lot of issues there I can explain in detail if need be. There's some legal exclusions. It talks about the powers, their term, and basically the training, the rules, the equipment, and stuff like that. So basically it would be a retired officer. You know, the safeguards in there that I've included in this, you know, they wouldn't be subject to collective bargaining. They wouldn't be subject to injured on duty pay. They're not subject to unemployment insurance or benefits. There's a pension cap they're subject to, so, you know, I'll just use a made-up number, but, you know, if an officer today makes $80,000 and they were retiring and got a, you know, a $65,000 pension, they can only make the difference between the current pay and their pension. So that $15,000, plus after 1 year, an additional $15,000. So it's not like a retired officer's gonna go on and make $100,000 on details. They're limited always to the difference between the pay for that current position they left, whatever rank it was, and their pension. Plus, after 1 year, 15 additional thousand they can do, but not for the first 12 months. So that's the gist of it. I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Katie?
I have a couple of questions. Chief, I support the concept. My questions are more technical questions about the article that you gave us itself. It looks like this might be a home rule petition. Is that the process
is,
here
yeah.
rather than a bylaw?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yes, I
It's a home rule
misspoke.
petition.
Home rule
Okay.
petition.
Okay, and is this modeled on some of the other home rule petitions that have passed from other communities?
Yes, I went through several. I made some changes that I actually think are better for the town from, an administrative end. In my packet here, I have, large cities. I have Brockton, Cambridge, Boston. I have many small towns. I have Essex, Watertown, Norwood, Cantons. I went through kind of a diverse group. Most of them are pretty standard in terms of Section 1. There's some variety on age, to be honest with you. Anywhere, I wrote so you basically would terminate on your 70th birthday, so you couldn't do it beyond the age of 69. That really varies. Some have younger. 65 was the youngest I saw. Some put 68, some put 72. There's a variety there. But Section 1's pretty standard. The legal exclusion, Section 2, is pretty standard. Some do not include the 150E, which is the collective bargaining law. I did, which means somebody couldn't file a grievance if they weren't to get a detail or something like that. I think that protects the town and more, so I included that. That was a split kind of on the ones I went through. Powers, Section 3 is pretty standard. The terms, Section 4 is pretty standard. Some do fixed terms. A lot do indefinite terms.
I had a question for you in Section 4, that second sentence where it says, in the case of a permanent removal, a special police officer shall be provided with 14 calendar days written
typo.
notice, which I think you might mean prior written notice, but are you contemplating, or do the other statute, special legislation give them a right to an appeal, or is it just, it's just the decision of the chief and then
No.
Yes.
that's it?
Correct.
And so the 14 days notice, really, we just let them know that
Yeah, I was kind of just
effective
saying.
14 days from now, they're no longer a special
Yeah,
police
I just
officer.
felt like in a fairness, like due process, you have the right in the prior sentence, to do it at any time, and just on more of a permanent removal, I just felt if
Okay.
somebody is financially dependent on this, and so the chief just call them in the office and, on a whim and make a permanent removal, but you could still immediately suspend them if, say, it was a problem or an issue you were concerned about. I would just immediately suspend them and then give the 14 days notice, and the suspension would run in the meantime, so they still wouldn't be able to serve.
Okay. And the only other question I had was on Section 1. I just looked at this quickly when I came over this afternoon, but there's no residency requirement, right? So it's just any former Milton police officer, whether they live in town once they're retired or they don't live in town.
So that's
Let's
gonna
say
be
a-
my question, so I don't
Let's say you
have
had a
question
police
on it.
officer move to Randolph or wherever, they could, because they're a retired Milton officer, they could still come back and do the details?
That's correct. There is no residency requirement, and actually, if you look in Section 2, where the comment, the part there where it says Section 99A of Chapter 41 of the General Laws, does not, that part not applying, that is the civil service requirement that police officers have to live within 15 miles of. I removed it. I did not find anywhere with a residency requirement. I think if we were to do that, we would, rather than be adding to our pool and having a good amount of surplus officers to go to, I think we would really be cutting that pool short. So I would advocate against that.
Okay. No, I just wanted to ask that.
I just feel,
Clear.
if somebody worked here 35 years and they have, a lot of experience and knowledge of the department and the community, where now we have incidents where it's either unfilled or somebody pulls up and it's a Randolph officer and they ask for a street. I don't know where that street is, and there's no help. If that officer lives a mile over the line into Braintree, I personally don't care. I want to appoint them based on their value and experience.
No, that makes sense to me. I just wanted to be clear on that because like I said, I didn't have a chance to go read all these state laws that are cited throughout this document today. So I think we'll just need, assuming we're going to submit this, and I do support us submitting it, I think we'll need to get it into the proper form. We'll have to ask town council probably to add in the preliminary language, about submitting this, getting the town meeting authorizing,
Right.
submitting it for home rule petition.
takes about, the Cambridge one, Pauline she did it for them. The governor just signed it last month. I think it was 3 months, start to finish, from their city council to the legislature, and then signature, House, both sides of the House. And the governor signs it pretty quick. The only caveat here is, and I've heard it, I've not seen it yet. I understand there's a law pending, or trying to get through, that allows every community to give blankets, so you don't have to, everyone doesn't have to keep going for home rule petition, because so many of them are going in there. The chief's correct, and 2/3 of the Commonwealth have already done it already, and the rest of them are heading that way. So that's the only thing that we could get lucky, may happen before town meeting. But
Yeah, there has been some discussion on that.
any other questions? But I'll go last. Anyone else? Michael? So I just have two questions, Chief. One is the 4 years, why 4 versus 5?
I just picked it because, 5, we had to stay under the 5, and I felt 4. I didn't want somebody applying like 4 years and 10 months, and then, by the time you make sure the criteria is met and, appoint them, then it would be beyond the 5 years. So I built it in as a cushion, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But, I'm flexible on it. It had to be under 5, and I just wanted a
Right,
cushion
5,
of.
according to, not 4196, right? You're talking about, like, training standards that there?
Yeah.
All right, I get that.
I just didn't want, I thought it'd be
I
unfair
get
if
that. No,
somebody
okay,
who's
I'm okay with that. And the only other one.
all of a sudden calls and then expects, Mike Dennehy, John King to drop what they're doing because he's applying on the last day.
Right.
That's why I did it.
And for all, I have no intention of doing this, even though I'm under the 4, so just let's make that perfectly clear. I have none. I burnt my uniforms already. I have none. I just thought of that just now. The only other one, I think in an initial proposal you had, I know Braintree's policy allows, so any police officer also who's retired that lives in it who would meet this criteria, you don't want to do that from an outside agency. I know it doesn't matter to me, but I know Braintree, Hanover do that. I think Weymouth might too. So they allow a municipal police officer who's retired, who is a resident of the town, also to make the pool even bigger. But I thought initially you wanted that. I'm fine with all of you.
Yeah, I didn't really explore it, to be honest with you. I don't want to say it didn't enter my mind, or I didn't have some discussions. I know Braintree, I know Hanover, some do it. I didn't really put a lot of effort, to be honest with you, into researching, retired Boston police and state
Right.
police who really didn't work in the department, don't know our policies, training. I focus more on our own
Okay.
staff. I just liked it. I know their background, I know their experience, I know their training. I felt like accountability-wise, it would be better than, I could have a Framingham cop that just happens to live in Milton.
Okay.
It didn't really draw a lot of interest from
I
me.
only asked that because I know some do, and I
They
knew
do because
Braintree
it does
for one,
create
yeah.
a bigger pool.
Yeah, it gives you a bigger pool, and when the chief refers to the administrative fee, that's 10% of every hour you bill.
Yeah.
So when you billing so many thousand hours a year for Milton police work, that's a significant amount of money that when you, as the chief says, when you give it away to Braintree, they're getting that money, not you. So when you increase your retiree pool, you're increasing your police pool, and therefore you're increasing, because Milton is still doing all the work, billing them, filling the jobs, meeting with the contractors, all of this is still being done by the Milton police. But when it goes to an outside agency, the chief loses the 10%. That's my only. I'm fine with it either way. I only wanted to ask you that. If you wanted to do it, I understand it, and I knew because I knew in Braintree definitely it was a big part of how they did it. But I'm fine with it as it is.
Yeah.
If you want to change it, come back to us. I'd be open either way.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay. Do we need a motion? Or do we need a? I need to go back and read this. I think we do.
We could move to submit it.
So, can I have a motion to submit this town council first for review and then ultimately to special town meeting in October? You have a motion on that? Can I have a motion?
I propose a motion to submit Police Chief King's article for retired police officer detail work to town council John Flynn, who will review and potentially subsequently submit to town meeting.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I believe both Representative Driscoll and Senator Timilty know this is in the pipeline, this may be coming.
They both said they were willing to help.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for your time. Good night.
Thanks, Chief.
Second issue is the plastic bag ban, which I'm going to yield the floor to Ms. Conlon, who's done the bulk of the work on this. And
These only were circulated last night by email, so I brought paper copies for everyone, clean
I
and.
thought you brought bags. I thought you brought
No,
bags.
I didn't bring plastic bags.
These are clean.
Clean and
Oh.
black lined against the Weston town
So
meeting
the Western
article.
one's the one that was circulated today, correct?
Yes, yeah, this is the exact one that was circulated.
Yeah, I have some too.
So earlier last week, I met with Mike Dennehy and also Hillary Waite, who's our environmental coordinator, and we had a discussion at this, the chair was not at the last meeting, but
Right.
you
No,
may have
I'm-
seen the tape. So we had a discussion, we were all really in support of the concept, and the idea was just we needed to start producing a draft. So Hillary had sent us a number of articles, also Karis North from Town Council's office had sent us some other bylaws that are in place in a number of communities. They're pretty similar. It seems like there's a form that's been circulating among the towns. So this is based on the Weston bylaw, and just briefly, the changes to it are, we took out in the findings and purpose section some language about compostable bags. It refers to studies that we don't have copies of, and Hillary thought that language really was not that necessary. Whereas the Weston bylaw made the Weston Board of Health the enforcement officer, Mike Dennehy thought it made sense for our new code enforcement officer really to be the one in our town who would enforce this. So that change has been made. We've changed the department to refer to the Inspectional Services Department. But the definitions of checkout bag and recyclable paper bag, reusable checkout bag really have not changed. Weston used 4 mils thick, and we talked about that being the heavier plastic bags. So we would be, if this were to pass town meeting, we'd be banning bags that are up to 4 mils thick, which is what a lot of communities have done. Some have done thinner plastic bags, but 4 mils gives us a little more, it's more inclusive, gives us a little more protection. One question that I had for the board is the definition of retail establishment. Weston's and some other communities made their bylaw apply to whether it's a for-profit business or a nonprofit, or even a religious institution, anyone that's in the business of selling goods and articles and food or personal services to a consumer. The Boston City Council's ordinance had a carve-out, and it's similar to what I put in brackets at the end of retail establishment. So the carve-out was for, they use the words bazaars, festivals, I added in fundraising events operated by a nonprofit or a religious organization. So if we had a church bazaar or something like that, that would be up to us. Do we want to carve that out of this application and allow those institutions to use the thin film, single-use plastic bags? So that's, the reason I put it in brackets was for it to be a discussion point. The other changes are mainly in the enforcement section. We added in some fines so that the first violation would be a $50 fine, and then it would go up to $100 for the second violation, $200 for the third and any subsequent violation. And they'd be cumulative, so each day when there's a violation, that would be a separate offense.
So this is for selling or using in your business, using the
Yes.
The illegal, do you want to call them illegal bags? Yeah, the illegal bags. Okay.
Or the prohibited bags.
Prohibited
maybe.
bags,
Let's
okay.
use that one.
I was going to say outside of scope.
And the effective date, a lot of communities were using 6 months following the approval by the Attorney General, or a specific date, whatever's later. So I just plugged in July 1st, 2019 as the other alternative date. And we'd be giving the Inspectional Services Department the authorization to adopt regulations. I'm not sure there's much more really that would need to be addressed through regulation that's not already included in here. But so this draft is for everyone's review. We have not yet sent this to Town Council, so we'll have to do that. I had gotten an email, I'm sure we all did, from Darrell Warner of Sustainable Milton. We may want to send this to him also to take a look at and see if they have any input, since we have a couple of weeks before the warrant deadline closes.
I'm okay with that. You want us to we'll send that to, you want to send it to me or to Michael send it to him?
Yeah, but I thought that we may want to see whether we have any comments first.
Okay,
And then
okay,
if we
okay.
do, we can revise it further before we send it to Town Council and Darrell and anyone else who might be appropriate.
You good?
Ju-
Comments?
As a footnote, I was at the Truman Highway Stop and Shop yesterday, and I heard the cashier tell a customer that it's going into effect on January 1st in Boston.
Right. So this puts a big emphasis on reusables, correct?
Yes.
Big emphasis on reusables. I believe in the meeting, as you know, I went and met just proactively with Mike Magnosa, who's our biggest retail, and he's seen this coming. The biggest thing he asked was, he didn't want us to do this and have it take effect in 30 days, and I assured him that this would be, you've actually gone even longer than, I think he had asked for spring of 19, July 1st would be even longer. He had told me about issues such as, like, you can buy a bag or you can rent a bag. There's so many different alternatives that you can utilize, and for the benefit of the other board members who weren't at the initial meeting we had with Hillary and Mike, my question was, because we live in such a recyclable world and we hear about recyclable bottles, and like, why can't we recycle these bags? And she was explaining that they're just so fine and so that they actually break the recycling machines, and they cause nothing but a problem for them. And I think that we're also finding too that this is having an effect on our stormwater issue, on catch basin cleaning, on all of those things. So I open the floor. Any comments? Anyone?
Well, I just want to say thank you for your work on this. And are we commenting now, or are we just looking at this and commenting on it later?
I think if you want to send comments later on this week, that would be fine.
Okay.
And then you want to put this back on for another agenda for a final vote? Or do we want to?
Sure.
Okay, so is the 13th enough time? Okay.
That's our deadline, yeah, so we'll
Yeah.
have to vote it that night.
And do we want to send this, do we want to ask John Flynn to look at this as well?
Yes.
He has not seen it at all yet.
Not yet.
Correct.
You okay with that, John? Okay.
Do you have a deadline that you'd like the comments by?
If we can get them by, let's say, maybe Thursday or Friday, well, how about Friday of this week? Then we
Friday
can
of this
get
week.
them to John and Karis.
Does
After that.
Hillary have any other concerns at all? Anything else that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I sent it to Hillary as well last night. I did not hear from her today, so I don't know if she might
No,
have talked with you, Mike.
I touched base with her today. She really likes what you've done with the document and appreciates the changes. Western model is very good. Obviously, there were some things that we talked about taking out, and you did that, so.
So this would apply to all of our retail establishments?
Yes. Well, how do people feel about carving out the nonprofits or the religious institutions? One issue that came up was the farmers market, and we did have a little bit of a discussion about when Mike Dennehy and Hillary Waite and I met about whether we should carve out the farmers market. But and I'm the one who brought it up. But Hillary and Mike, to their credit, their point was that look, this farmers markets are all about buying local, and a lot of the people who go to the farmers markets are very environmentally minded, and so there may not be as much of a reason to do so. And a lot of them bring their own reusable bags.
Well,
So
I was just there with my mom, and I saw a lot of people using plastic bags.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually the same thing.
And I'm not saying that, I'm not making a judgment about that. I'm just saying that's what I observed. So it might just be worth thinking about a way to help something like the farmers market, which is an institution really, transition.
I should mention, I did put in a call and we had a conversation. Gene Boylan, who's the president of the farmers market, and I spoke about a week ago. And he was going to talk with some of the vendors and also talk with the organization that is the Association of the Farmers Markets and find out what their practices are in other towns. And we haven't connected back yet, so I'll connect with Gene this week.
So
and
I go
see
a
what
lot.
feedback he's gotten.
I kind of agree with Melinda, because that's my thought, is that Milton is, I mean, you do get people who bring it, but if you don't, it's plastic. It's definitely plastic.
Right, and we get a lot of people from across the way.
Yeah.
So that, I think that's where my concern is, to help people make that transition somehow, if we're not going to exempt them.
So when I was in Idaho, if you don't have a bag, they sell you a bag, a reusable, for $1. That was last week. There is no bags. If you didn't bring your own, it's similar to Ireland. You just buy the bag for $1.
Yeah, And I think that's great as long as we warn people too, because I
Right.
mean, there are people who go there and they actually use vouchers. So
Mm.
I'm not sure what kind of, I think we just want to be sensitive to that.
Go ahead, Michael.
Is there a way, I like the idea of the policy applying across the board. I don't like as much the idea of the fines applying to nonprofits
Okay.
and religious institutions. So if we could instruct the organizations and have it applied to them, but maybe the fines wouldn't apply. So the instruction would be there, and it would really be up to them, to the police themselves. And, I'm quite sure that they probably would, but I just...
What if they don't?
If they don't?
If they don't?
If they don't, well, I'm a little less sure, and I could be convinced, certainly, but I'm a little less sure about fining religious institutions and nonprofits under this.
I don't even see fines. I mean, when I think about just enforcement of town bylaws, of all the ones that even the current, it's very rare that you even see a fine ever. I think though, having it though, I agree with Katie, that it is a deterrent in case you do get that one, real offender. It does give you some teeth, because without the teeth, you can't do anything. And I think especially to just our animal control officer, who doesn't use it a lot, she's probably the one person who has to, but it does give her the teeth. So I don't think it'd be, we're not looking to walk around here with a hammer, but I'm okay with it being in there. That's just my own thought.
Excuse me for texting while I'm sitting here. I texted Council O'Malley in Boston. I said, does the plastic bag ban apply to Haymarket and other farmers market? Obviously, Haymarket downtown is one of the biggest farmers markets around. He said yes, but ... So, kind of the same thing,
Okay.
right?
And for people who are watching, we should mention there are some exemptions that are built into this draft already. For instance, dry cleaning bags,
Mhm.
newspaper bags, pet waste.
The pet
Actually,
waste
that's
bags
not
that you
even-
buy, the pet waste bags that
Yeah,
you buy, the
actually,
rolls, you mean?
I think we added that, but we've added produce bags, meat, fish, bulk food items, those were in the Western. I think we talked about adding the pet waste ones, which would fall into the same category. So we'll need to add that. But so those are exempt. This bylaw would not apply to those types of bags.
Okay. Well, the pet waste bags are a stormwater issue. Okay, so by Friday, comments to you,
That'd be great. Or,
All
well,
right.
to the town administrator.
or town administrator? And then we'll forward them to John, and we'll have this ready to go. All good? Item C, change from the Board of Selectmen to Select Board. I will yield this to Mr. Zulus.
I'm sure Christine Fisk was probably the best advocate for this, but I have a very brief PowerPoint to kind of walk through
Is this
a
the one
few
you sent to
thoughts.
us?
Yes, yeah, and I may take the seat over there just so I
Go
can
ahead.
see it.
Is it cold in here? Turn the fans on.
That's interesting perspective, being here. So this is the proposed warrant article that was presented to the board in early March and has been circulated again to the board members. If I could have the next slide. This proposed warrant article is very brief, very simple, and it is comprised of language that has been vetted by other towns. This was the language that was used, and for the most part, by and approved by Brookline last October. The proposed warrant article has essentially two aspects. One is that the name of this body, Selectmen, would be struck and replaced by Select Board or Select Board members, and that the bylaws would require the use of gender-neutral language in currently active and future town documents and communications. So my effort here is really just to suggest some historical and cultural context for this proposed change. So if I could have the next slide. When I first became aware of this government some 15 years ago or more. The word, or the name of the board, Selectmen, struck me, and it struck me as a bit of an anachronism, but I didn't think beyond that. I thought, well, there must be some reason for it. So in this context, I tried to look back into what the reason for it was. So the name Selectmen was used in New England town government back in the 1660s. There were other names that preceded it: the town men, the 10 men, the 7 men, and the selectmen basically, and it was 2 words, selectmen were basically those men selected to make decisions on behalf of the town. It struck me in reading some of the history that it wasn't just that women were discriminated against in Milton town government or weren't considered. They did not exist for the purposes of town government in Milton in the 1600s. There's just no evidence of them anywhere. So why should we make a change now? The simple answer is we should make a change because Milton has changed. As we all know, Milton was incorporated in 1662, and the first evidence of the selectmen, again, selectmen, 2 words, was in 1668. The first board comprised of Sergeant Babcock, Sergeant Blake, and Thomas Swift, and that's not a typo. Apparently these 2 gentlemen named Sergeant spelled Sergeant differently. And of course in 2018 we have our current selectmen, the 5 of us. So back in 1668 we had 2 sergeants and no women, and in 2018, exactly 350 years later, we have no sergeants and 2 women. If we could have the next slide. So a few things about how Milton has changed. This is a map of Milton in 1662, right around the date of the first selectmen. You can't really read the type at the bottom, but this map from 1662 shows that the estimated population was between 200 and 250, and the estimated number of homes was 40, 38 of which I think are shown on this map. So that is from the History of Milton by Mr. Hamilton in 1957. If I could have the next slide. And of course, in 2018, Milton has grown from between 200 and 250 residents to about 28,000, and the number of homes has grown from approximately 40 to approximately 10,000. So that is a significant change in 350 years. Could I have the next slide, please? A few notes on attire. Certainly, New England attire in the 1600s. This is a rendering of New England attire in the 1600s, and there's been a significant change in that over the last 315 years. This is some of the attire that you might see in Milton in 2018. Certainly, that's a significant change. If I could have the next slide. Milton taxpayers in 1662, right around the time. These are all the Milton taxpayers in 1662. You'll notice a number of familiar names: Collicott, Gulliver, Swift, Vose, Tucker, Glover, a number of familiar names to us to this day. But certainly in 1662 and in the 1600s, when the selectmen were first named, all of the taxpayers in town were men. There are no women on this list. Fast forward 350 years, if we get on the next slide, certainly in 2018 we don't have a list of the taxpayers, but certainly women do pay a significant amount of the taxes now in 2018, which I think is a significant change from 1668 when they paid none of the taxes. If we could have the next slide, please. A couple of other changes. Certainly New England Town Meeting in the 1600s, all men arguing various positions. This is, I think, a rendering of an Ipswich town meeting in the late 1600s. And certainly that has changed. 2018, you'll see a lot of diversity, you'll see a lot of technology, and you'll see 2 members of the board in the right-hand corner having a very intense and I'm sure high-level conversation about an important matter of the day. Next slide, please. The selectmen in the 1600s. Again, this is from Albert Teal's History of Milton, Mass. from 1640 to 1887. This is a listing of the Milton selectmen in the 1600s. Again, it is select men. The term was 2 words. It reflected the men who were in the room, who were deciding on the name, and who were representing the town at that time. And certainly that has changed, if we could have the next slide, because in 2018, certainly we have a little more diversity, and there are women on the Board of Selectmen. If we could have the next slide, please. So, just to sum up some of the changes that have occurred in the last 350 years, in 1668, when this name Selectmen was decided upon, women did not exist for the purposes of town government. In 2018, women do exist for the purposes of town government. It seems to me that should be acknowledged. It should be acknowledged not only for the present, but for the future. If we could have the next slide, please. With respect to this idea that we may be seeking to change Milton's history, no one's seeking to change Milton's history here. Our history is what it is, and it always will be what it is. The only thing that this article seeks to change is to acknowledge the present and future reality that women do exist for the purposes of Milton town government. Next slide, please. The bylaws. We change our bylaws frequently. We've changed them for developers. We changed them for leash laws. We're seeking to change them now for the plastic bag ban and such. So changing the bylaws, it seems to me, is not unusual. And again, here it's a very simple, easy change for the purpose of acknowledging the reality of women in town government. Next slide, please. Ms. Fisk alluded to this. The other communities that have made the change to select board in Massachusetts, it's more than 30 towns who've done it, that have done it already, including the towns shown up there. Still others are in the process of doing so. And still others have made the change from alderman to town council. So in all, it is somewhere north of 40 towns who have made a similar change, either from selectmen to select board, or from alderman to some other name, usually council. Usually they change it to council. Next slide, please. It seems to me that in this day and age, the phrase selectmen kind of causes some confusion, because many times those on the board, those before the board, those in the community refer to select person, select women, select people. If you go on our website, our moderator refers to the select board in his publication of About Town Meeting on the town website. Under our current bylaws, none of these are accurate. None of these reflect what our bylaws reflect. And it seems to me if we bring our bylaws up to date on this and standardize it, it will make things a lot more clear and lead to a lot less confusion. It seems to me that because of a decision that was made in 1668, exactly 350 years ago, in order to be a member of our executive board, a woman must agree to be referred to as a select man. And it seems to me that the town should not require that. This last slide reflects something that has occurred to me over the last 10 years in my own life, which is that many times children without the baggage and history have a lot more clarity of thought on certain issues, and certainly my two daughters, who are now 7 and 10, have raised the question of why it's called the Board of Selectmen, since women can be on it. They've said, well, why isn't it called the Board of Select People? That to me is the whole argument and the whole reasoning, very simply. That is the essence of it. The town made a decision 350 years ago based on the makeup of those who were in town government at the time. And it seems to me that's changed, and perhaps we should change our bylaws to reflect that. So I'm going to ask this board to vote to submit this article to town meeting, so the town meeting can decide whether this change should be made. So that's all I have.
stand there.
Oh, well, I don't have to.
You can.
It's a pretty good perspective from there.
So I'm going to speak last on this, but I'll open this to, open this to discussion with my colleagues. You want to go first? Mrs. Collins.
Well, I don't really have any questions, because it seems as if people have feelings, their own feelings, but I'll say that I think that this is something that we should consider, and as Mike Zullis pointed out, here we are. In a different time, and I'm happy to hear other people's thoughts on the proper way to go about this. I will say that I guess I am among those who feel that it's momentous and exciting, actually, to be here considering this, and that I had hoped that we could have the public more engaged in this discussion so that we could move this forward together. Because while I know we're not at the cutting edge here, Milton is a complicated kind of place that does have. I mean, we are a very old community, and I know a lot of the other communities are old, but I mean, we are the first government in the nation here that's not indigenous. I mean, so I just thought it would be a wonderful thing to celebrate something like this as a community, and so to have a hearing and to have people come in and. Maybe a citizen's petition isn't the way to do this, but so now I'm confused though, because now we do have, I think, a citizen's petition with signatures. So I'm not sure what the right way to go is, other than it would be great to step into the future together.
Katie, you want to go first? Tony, who?
Yeah, I'm happy to add some comments, and I know that this is something that probably each and every one of us has on the board has thought about and deliberated over. And Christine, your presentation was a great one. Thank you for your remarks. The primary issue that I have with this is not that I'm opposed to gender-neutral language or gender-inclusive language. It's the term itself, select board. I find it awkward. I find it clunky and a little clumsy. And, I understand that there are inherent limitations in the English language, many of them difficult to overcome. We don't have the benefit of being a Romance language where we can sort of denote masculine or feminine with a preceding article or a single letter at the end of a word. So there are limitations to that, and I understand that. I spoke with somebody earlier in the week by the name of Lisa Troy. I hope that it's okay that I use her name. She reached out to me. We had a conversation. I've never met her. If she's sitting here tonight, hello. Hi, Lisa. And I expressed my thoughts. I'm not opposed to a potential change. What I am opposed to specifically is this term, for the reasons that I just articulated. And I've racked my brain trying to come up with an alternative, something a little bit more graceful, a little bit more mellifluous, if you will, something that rolls off the tongue easier. I haven't come up with anything. I'm open to alternatives. So that's the first point. The second point is I can understand that there's a certain trend that's unfolding here in other cities and towns. I'm mindful of it. I respect that. I would hope that Milton is not a town that follows trends, that we're better than that. I'm all for looking towards other towns for guidance. The term that we use frequently here is best practices. When it comes to certain matters, substantive matters like personnel issues, perhaps a labor issue, a budgetary issue. But the fact that other towns are doing it, while it might be persuasive, it isn't persuasive enough for me, frankly. It just isn't. I can understand how you might disagree with that, but I'm just sharing my thoughts. I do want to give deference to the tradition of the town and of this term, and I think we should vet it a little bit more. I do hold fast with some traditional arguments, and I think that to some extent, you need to be mindful of this term and the history of this language in this term and how it relates to town government, town meeting. We're one of the oldest towns here in the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is one of the oldest states here in the United States, and I think that that deserves some deference. And the other piece of it too is, you know, I think if this is going to happen, and it may happen at some point, very soon, who knows, time will tell. I'd prefer to see it originate as a citizen's petition. I personally think that the success of it passing at town meeting is greater if it originates at a citizen's petition. And the reason I feel that way is because, Christine, as you know, you've gone out and you've sought out signatures, you've collected them, you've received feedback, you've given this some exposure, you've gotten opinions in support or in opposition to. People are talking about it. You're able to build a groundswell of support, some grassroots advocacy, and I think if you were to build momentum, that it would have a far greater chance of succeeding as a citizen's petition personally. And it sounds like you've already gone over that hurdle. You've already collected more than enough signatures to submit it as a citizen's petition. So that would be my recommendation. It's not that I don't think that this proposal has merit. I think it has a lot of merit. It's just that I am in favor of the status quo more strongly than I am in this change.
Do you want to go for? Do you want to go? I was going to leave you as the I was going to leave you as the senior member of this board to speak last, if that's okay with you. If
Whatever
not,
you
can
prefer.
speak.
You're the chair. If you'd like to
You
speak.
tell me. You want to speak first? I'll do whatever you want.
I'd like to hear your thoughts, Richard.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay. So, let me begin by saying this. I owe my 10 years as police chief to two women, Kathy Fagan and Mary McGettrick. I have the deepest respect and admiration for both of them, as I do the most senior member of this board, who collectively probably works harder than all of us, and the junior member of this board, who I consistently tell to fly her flag. And if I thought for 1 minute, any of those four women thought for a second that they did not hold the place that they have gone out and asked people to vote for, because I will say this to you, if you ever decide to run for this office, it's one of the hardest things you will ever do. It is very hard, and I think we can all agree, to knock on someone's door, often someone you don't know, and ask them to vote for you. And as you've seen just sitting here tonight, each and every week we are here collectively. We may not always agree on every single issue, but we find a way to work through issues. So given that, my biggest problem in this has been the process. Because in the four people, I respect my colleague, Mr. Zulus, but if I were him, and maybe it's the policeman in me, I would have begun at ground zero, which are the women who have run and currently sit on this board, which is what I did. Because I wanted to hear their point of view, because they are the individuals who have held and currently hold this title. Like Mr. Farrington, I'm not totally against this. I'm not so sure I like select board. I do feel, and many people have talked to me about tradition, and I am also bothered a little bit by some who don't even know me, who've emailed me like mad, thinking that I'm being an obstructionist. I don't have sons, I have daughters. I couldn't be any prouder of my daughters. I'm the father of a combat Marine. I let my 18-year-old daughter get on a C-130 and fly to Iraq, wondering if she'd ever come back. So no one has more pride in women than I do. But with regard to process, I don't think it's for us. And so I've racked my brain, I've talked to some of these individuals, and I think that, and I've looked at other communities, and many of them, outside of a citizen, outside of coming from the wood, they've had committees. And the committee that created this, that recommended the five board, the five of us sit here today, is the Town Government Study Committee. And I want to propose a motion tonight that we send this to them. Kathy Fagan sits on that committee, Rick Neely sits on that committee, Mr. Walker, Mr. Cronin, people who've spent years dedicating their lives to this town, to let them vet this a little bit, because I think that for the success of it, that would be your greatest, I think it has to have some vetting, beyond more than us. Because I don't think it's really incumbent upon us to do this. I think it's incumbent, it wasn't incumbent on us. Kathy Fagan, Katie Conlon, David Burns, and I didn't come up with the idea, let's go to 5. We went along with it. The town, it went through a vetting process, it went to town meeting, it was passed, and we're sitting here. So, my opinion is, based on the women who served here and the women who serve here today, I think that the greatest likelihood of success is to refer this matter to them first, let them vet it, and let them recommend it. Because if the town government, and there's the one thing I will disagree with Mr. Farrington, is citizen positions take a very hard, and we've seen in the past, a very high hurdle, because you have to get through here, the warrant committee, and then having something recommended by the town government study committee, which they've admitted to me readily, they never even thought of this. When we created this new board, Mr. Zulus came up with the idea of vice chair, so I went right to them, like, you recommended 5, how did you recommend infrastructure? They're like, we never even thought of it. So they had to talk about it. So that's my thought. My thought would be to, and I think this kind of meets what Mr. Farrington has talked about, what Mrs. Collins has talked about, and I hope maybe what Ms. Conlon will talk about as well. And that's where I am on this. So I yield the floor to our senior member, who is no harder working person than Katie Conlon. No, I'm
no
serious.
pressure
No,
here,
but
Richard.
listen,
No
it's
pressure
true.
here, right?
It's true. I'm not putting any pressure. But and no one would have ever thought we'd be sitting here as we are today, but we are. And I recognize it, and I say that to you repeatedly. And I value your thoughts, and so the floor is yours.
Well, I think I agree with a little bit of what everyone has already said so far. And just want to step back a little bit. And the only thing I can do these are issues where we're all going to have a personal opinion. So I think all you can do is you speak from the heart, you speak honestly on a topic like this. Personally, I've never thought that the word selectman or the terms or the words board of selectmen was in any way exclusionary, because I want to just add to the history that was shown on the PowerPoint. Women have been serving on this board since 1993, when Catherine Haynes Dunphy was elected. In the last 25 years, several times, a majority of the board, it was 3 members, but 2 of those 3 members were women. So, I think sometimes someone who might be new to the town, who might be looking at the PowerPoint, see, my photo and Melinda's photo up in the PowerPoint, might think that this is a recent phenomenon. And it's not. 25 years ago was when we had the first woman elected to the board. And Marianne McGetrick's name came up, Kathy Fagan's name came up. I did talk with both of them to get their thoughts on this, having had my own thoughts on it. And I think the 3 of us really were all in the same place, that it's not, we haven't personally viewed the word selectman as exclusionary. I've actually kind of viewed it as, I know the words tonight that were used were archaic, or something that we came up with 350 years ago. We weren't alone 350 years ago coming up with it. It was all the towns and it was the state. Because if you look at the Mass General laws, there's a lot of references to boards of selectmen, and that would still be the case even if we were to change our bylaws. But I really kind of view the word selectman as kind of unique to our New England form of town government here in this part of the country, with our town meeting and our board of selectmen and a representative, whether it's a representative or an open town meeting, it's unique to this part of the country, and it's something that I've always had a lot of interest in and had high esteem for, and that's why I ran for town meeting member when I was very young, and considered, had an idea that I'd like to run for Board of Selectmen at some point. I never thought that just because I was not a man, I couldn't run for the Board of Selectmen. So I haven't viewed it from that point of view. With all that said, I respect that there's difference of opinion here and that people have different thoughts. And we've received some emails, I think, from some of the people who are here this evening. And I understand some of the issues that have been raised about gender-neutral language. What I do agree with Tony on is I'm not crazy about the name Select Board. And I'd rather say selectman than the more cumbersome Select Board member. And now that I'm serving on the Massachusetts Selectmen's Association, maybe at some point it'll be the Select Board Association, we'll see. You know, I've talked to people in other towns where this change has been made, and the first time I heard about it was 5 years ago when I was elected in 2013, and I went to the new selectmen's training. And I think it was selectmen from Amherst or Northampton, out in the western part of the state, where this was starting to become an issue, and towns are starting to move in this direction. And I think, Mike, you said maybe 40 towns?
It's been more than 30 have changed to select board, and then there's another 10 or so that have changed from alderman to probably town council most of the time. So those are the two.
So we're seeing it more now coming into communities that were up, named up in the PowerPoint that are like Hull, Winchester, Needham, some of the communities that are closer to us that perhaps we may compare ourselves with more than we may with some of the other towns where town meetings tend to weigh in on national issues. We don't do that sort of thing. So I think when we see it becoming an issue in communities that we maybe compare ourselves with more and more, I understand why this is growing as an issue, and I've seen it at the MMA and at the Mass Selectmen's Association. And I've talked with members from those other communities, and they seem to all be using this term select board. I don't know if there's a better term that could be used. I'm not crazy about select board member. That's just my personal opinion, but obviously other communities have gone in that direction, and I'll just say that I respect that there are differences of opinion. I guess we're in a bit of a procedure. I have a procedural question. Since we've had the petition signatures delivered tonight with 150 signatures, that would qualify as a citizen's petition for a special town meeting warrant article. I would be willing to vote to submit it to town meeting, but I think now we've already had the signatures delivered to us in a petition format. Richard, your idea about submitting it to the Town Government Study Committee is not one that I had thought of, but that's an interesting idea. I'd be open to that as well. But I was prepared to vote to submit it and let town meeting decide the issue, but I'm open to the Town Government Study Committee. If they're interested in looking at it, I'd be open to that as well.
So part of the reason I thought that was twofold. One is, obviously, as I've said, is that much of Mr. all of it, the change to town, strong town administrator, the 5-member board, all originated and came from them. The second thing is when we think of going to town meeting, when issues like this have happened, often at town meeting, things have been referred to the Town Government Study Committee, and they stop with this. So I was just thinking, being preemptive, because I could see it happening either way, because while there may be 100 signatures, I don't think this is representing the totality of the community. And I think we all agree we're getting emails from one section of the community, not a wide span. And town meeting represents the whole community. So just looking at the makeup of the Town Government Study Committee, and I had conversation with Kathy Fagan about this, and she was the first one that we actually talked about this. I'm like, what do you think about you guys taking this and taking a look at it? Both, and I get both your comments on the select board. I'm like, the word doesn't bother me. It doesn't, I don't know. I'm not as upset by that part of it. I'm more concerned about the process and the inclusivity. And as I said, I began with the 4 people who have met the most, the 2 that I sit with, and the 2 who put me here when I became chief. And basically, that really helped me to kind of decide that we should have the Town Government Study Committee vet this and report out to town meeting. And I think if it's favorable, you'll have a much stronger success. And they may tweak it to something that none of us were thinking of that addresses the issues that both Katie and Tony talk about. So,
Richard, could I just add on that point?
Sure.
The reason I don't really like select board member or select board is, it sounds pretentious. It sounds like the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Watergate, is something like that. Maybe executive board, maybe there's a better terminology for it that is gender neutral, that addresses the concern that some people in the community have, but that is a little bit less cumbersome. I don't know. And maybe the Town Government Study Committee could look into that. Maybe other communities have explored that and haven't come up with a better alternative. I don't know. That's just my own personal gut reaction. Others may not share that, but Tony mentioned it, and I agree with him. It's just a more cumbersome term.
Well, I tried to brainstorm some alternatives, and the first term that came to mind was counselor. but, you know, as we know here in the Commonwealth, that term has a direct connotation to city form of government with a.
Or a council form of government. Randolph has it.
Right,
Randolph
exactly.
has it,
No
the
town
council
meeting in
form of
Randolph,
government.
but, you know, a governor, a mayor, what have you, and then city council. So that term, for those reasons, is probably not going to work.
It's also a legislative term rather than an executive term.
Lisa did suggest executive board. I was frankly, I warmed up to that a little bit, okay? But again, I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but there are alternatives out there. There are, and I think that, you know, with more discussion, more dialogue, we'll come up with something I think that's more agreeable. But the former English major in me, the lover of words, the lover of language, I just cannot get on board with select board. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. So, you know, that's the reason I feel the way I do.
So I'd like to make a motion that we refer, oh, go ahead. You want to speak again? Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may.
Okay.
So,
Oh, we're going to tell you no.
what's that?
No.
Wait, what's that?
No, I say we're going to tell you no.
Tell me no?
No, go ahead.
Oh, in terms of the process, there's several ways for a proposed article to get on the warrant. Really just a couple, really through this board submitting, or a citizen's petition. So, I'm not sure what the concern about the process is. In terms of the Town Government Study Committee, my understanding is that the Town Government Study is about structure. It's not about what we call ourselves. And it seems to me there's not a whole lot of research to do here about what towns are doing. We have it. We know it. It would likely be that the opinions of the Town Government Study Committee members, whatever they are, would probably govern what the Town Government Study Committee recommends on this. If people want to have a real discussion in the community, you know, to Melinda's point, it seems to me the place for that is town meeting and the run-up to town meeting. And so it's unclear to me, you know, why at this juncture it would make sense to send this to the Town Government Study Committee, given that that's a committee about structure, and they're dealing with several structural issues, and who knows when they would get to it, because they're dealing with some things that we know about now. And I'm also, it's unclear to me what more there is to research about this, other than, well, just maybe to come up with some alternatives named because they're out there, but they're not being used. They're, you know, maybe other communities have looked into it, but they're not being used, whatever they are. So, if the citizens who want this want it to go forward, it's going forward. It's going to be on the warrant. Okay, I think that this board should support it being on the warrant to be discussed at town meeting to get the community's view on this, because that's where we do that. We do it at town meeting. We don't do it at the Town Government Study Committee, where, you know, again, we get proposals on the structure of town government. So my intention was and is to move to submit this to be considered for an article on the warrant. And my guess is, Katie, to your question about the petition, my guess is that the petitioners would welcome the Board of Selectmen to submit this for the warrant for town meeting, because you know, they have a number of signatures, but you know, that's going to have to go through a whole verification process, and that'll take time from the town clerk's role. She'll have to go through, and she can do it quickly, but she'll have to go through and verify it. So my guess is that the petitioners would welcome the Board of Selectmen supporting this and submitting it for consideration at town meeting. And so my intention was to move to submit this as an article at town meeting. And so, Richard, you have a different motion, so I'm happy to take it either way. If you want to take your motion first, and we can debate that. But that's, you know, that was my intention.
So my motion is that we refer, you have your opinion of structure, but going back to what Tony said, the Town Government Study Committee had a lot of conversation about all this. And I think they would welcome this, and I don't think this should come from us. I'm just giving you my 2 cents. I'm a member of the board. I just don't think it should come from us. And And to be honest, I wish in the beginning of this that you had gone to the root, that you had gone to people who've been in this office and our two colleagues and started with them, but you didn't. But that's here, let me just finish. That's here. So you have your proposal, I have mine. I mean, my thought is that we need someone independent to look at this, based on several reasons. A, is it the right thing to do? B, both in the concerns that Tony and Katie have regarding the language and the actual term, because I could tell neither one of them are comfortable with it as it is, and maybe also to address some of the concerns that Melinda has. So my motion is to refer this topic or this decision to the Town Government Study Committee for review and recommendation, report back to us.
Are you proposing that motion
I'm
right now?
proposing that motion right
I
now.
second that motion.
Any further discussion?
I'm opposed to that motion.
Okay, all right.
So just,
But we've already got one motion on the floor, so.
oh, no, I understand.
Okay.
I'm opposing the motion. So I oppose the motion because I think it's appropriate for this to go to town meeting, and it will go to town meeting if the petitioners choose to go that route. The only question is whether this board is going to support it or not. This board can decide to support it, or it can decide not to support it. In terms of the process, and Richard, we can
I
discuss
get
this
that. I
offline,
get
but
it.
in terms
I
of the
get it.
process, I submitted this 4 months ago because I thought it was a good idea, and that's the process for getting it on a warrant. I didn't know, that there was some kind of outside process that I should go through. That's the process for getting something on a warrant when you think it's a good idea. So that's the reason that I went through that process, okay? So I oppose the motion. I think it's going to be on the warrant regardless, and I think this board should support it being decided at town meeting.
Any further comment?
But I guess my only, well, it looks like Melinda has
Oh,
a
no,
question
yeah,
too, but
yeah, no, go ahead.
mine is really more of a procedural question, because what I understood that Christine was doing when she submitted the signatures was actually submitting them to us. I mean, she asked us to submit the article, but she also submitted the same language that Mike has drafted, signed, I believe, right, signed by 150 people. So that, that's more than the number of signatures that are required for a special town meeting. So, I mean, I think it's been submitted. I guess we'll have to take a look at the town clerk. We'll have to certify the signatures, but I'm assuming that it's being submitted as that. But at the same time, the board could refer the question to the town government committee to study. This town government committee could report back at the October town meeting, give
agree.
their opinion, or they could come in with some other recommendation, or they may, suggest that it go to the January town meeting. They could come in with any number of options, and I understand what you're saying, Mike, that a lot of what they've looked at is structure, but they had a very broad charge. I mean, I was on that committee, and we were looking at a lot of things beyond just structure of government, at least initially. So I think their charge is so broad that this is something that they could consider. It might at this point be an advisory opinion if there's already a citizen's petition submitted. That doesn't address, you're asking the board to submit,
I
so
am.
that's different. But it seems to me that by delivering the signatures tonight, they've also actually submitted assuming the town clerk certifies the number of signatures, they've submitted a warrant article.
Wait a minute.
Oh, yes, and that's my concern too. I mean, we have this warrant article submitted, and it has more than.
You have a citizen petition.
Citizens petition, but with the warrant language, and so that's more than the number, and so and that's to hear that their charge is actually broader. I think that I like the idea of both things happening, because I agree that the language is a bit difficult, and that Milton is Milton, and I think that we should do something that's speaks to who we are as a community. So I'd like to see the board acknowledge its support for supporting women, and coming up with something that's particularly good for Milton, while also seeing if the government study committee can help us maybe refine the language. Oh, wait.
Go ahead.
So I was going to say, so the petition hasn't been submitted to the clerk's office yet. Okay, so if we want to talk about procedure, the question is whether this board is going to support submitting it now. That's really the only question. And we can talk about, the procedure and when it came in, but it hasn't gone to the clerk's office yet. So it seems to me it hasn't been submitted. My guess is if we're stuck on that procedure, I'm sure the petitioners would withdraw it if this board supported it. The question is, very simply, does this board support it at this time?
Right.
We have town councilors, so maybe I could just ask a question. I thought that, I could be wrong, but my memory is that sometimes articles, citizen petitions have been hand-delivered at a selectmen's meeting. We've sent them down to the town clerk's office to get the signatures requested. So I'm just not sure whether, I just want to be sure that by coming up and handing, I think to Emily or to Mike, the list, is that a submission of a citizen's petition with the requisite number of signatures, assuming the town clerk certifies them? As I said, I was willing to submit it as an article submitted by this board. I'm still willing to do that.
Good.
But I think that we've got a question as to whether we might actually have two articles that, assuming this board were to submit, do we have two articles, basically?
Well, it's not two articles, it's the same article, and my guess is that those who submitted it, if they needed to withdraw it in order for us to support it, they would do that. That's my guess.
Which just brings up another question, because I know we've had an issue in the past where if you want to, once a citizen's petition has been submitted, in order to withdraw it, you got to get the consent of all the 150 people who have signed it. Now, we may not be at that point, by it being hand-delivered tonight, I don't know. But I know that issue has come up in the past. And sometimes citizens' petitions have stayed in the warrant because they couldn't get all the people who signed it. It's a lot easier in the summer, or the springtime meeting, when you have 10 signatures rather than 100. But that has happened in the past where an article stayed in the warrant because they couldn't get all of the people who had signed it to sign a withdrawal of it. That may be premature, but I just want to flag it as a question since the petition got handed up to the table earlier this evening.
You understand you're coming to us with something that you're asking us just like that to change. And I think you can sense that there's some uncomfortable feeling. It's not, hope that you understand too that none of us here, there's no one here. I mean, you've heard Katie, who's the most senior member of this board, has said, articulate her own views. And when she said that to me personally when I first met her, which was similar to what Kathy Fagan said to me, I got that. And Melinda, who I keep telling all the time, fly your flag, because she's been a great addition here. I don't see the need to rush. And I give credence, a great deal of weight, to those who've held this office and hold this office, who are female. And I understand Mr. Zulus wants to push this through as is now, and you've come here with, but I think that as women, appreciating all the women bring, not just to the world, but especially to our town and to town government, I just don't see the problem with us letting the town government study committee weigh in on this and give us some comment on what they think. That's just my thought. And I'm not saying against it, but I just think it needs a little bit of look here from beyond this table.
Could I make an addition? So, to the extent that this is at all helpful, and it may not be, but I did call over to the town of Arlington, and I spoke to the woman that works in the selectman's office, and I asked for a little history on how this originated and what its status was, and so on and so forth. Right now, it's just waiting on sign-off from the Attorney General to take effect from the change, Board of Selectmen to Select Board. However, it did originate as a citizen's petition. So to the extent that that's helpful, I wanted to share that. And it may be representative of some of the other changes that occurred from Board of Selectmen to Select Board. I don't know. I did not take the time to individually call to each and every town that has made that change. But the other piece of it, as it occurred to me, thinking about this, reflecting upon it, I think the town of Milton does a fantastic and a wonderful job of encouraging women, school-age girls, school-age young women, adult women, to participate in town government. I really do. And as Katie touched upon, just a brief overview, I mean, there's Kathy Dunphy, Kathy Fagan, Diane Agostino, Melinda Collins.
Marion McGetrick.
Marion, of course, Marion. How could I forget her? I spoke with her. The entire school committee, with the exception of Kevin Donahue, is made up of females. The Board of Health, 3 members of the 5-member planning board are females. My point being that I think it doesn't have the chilling effect. That was a term that was used during Citizen Speak. It doesn't have a chilling effect at all. I don't think it's a barrier or an impediment to women getting involved in town government. It may be in other towns. That's very possible. And that may be the genesis and the origin for them making that change. I don't know. We don't know. But in Milton, it clearly isn't. So for one of the arguments in favor of the change, to say that it has a chilling effect, frankly, it's not persuasive for me. So I wanted to share that as well. Thank you.
Any other comments on the motion?
I just want to say,
I got you pose the motion. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, that's what, not what I was
All
going
right,
to say. What I was going to say was, on the suggestion that I'm somehow trying to push this, I mean, this was submitted 4 months ago. So I don't think it's fair to say that I'm trying to push this. We're trying to follow.
You're trying to push it.
Okay,
Be
fair
honest,
enough.
you're trying to push it.
That's a fair opinion on your point. I think we're trying to follow the process, and that's, I believe it should be done. If other people don't believe it should be done now, that's fine. And on the second point, as to whose opinion is persuasive, those who are currently holding the role or who have held the role, their opinions are persuasive. I think equally persuasive are those who may in the future hold the role. So I don't
But they
necessarily.
haven't done that yet, though. I have to give more weight to those who have. I
You're
just do.
entitled to that.
I do.
My view is that there's equal credence to those who may want to seek the role in the future. So for all of those reasons, I oppose the motion, and I hope that this board will support submitting this for town meeting to decide.
Any other comments?
Question.
Go ahead.
I'm still stuck on the procedure. I mean, I feel like since we had this submitted, that we need to vote on it.
We don't, well, so my motion is to refer this to Town Government Study Committee. That's the motion that's on the table.
Okay, thank you.
As far as our vote,
Right.
they can still go to town meeting with it, but as far as our particular vote, the motion on the table is to refer this to Town Government Study Committee for their review and comment.
I've seconded that motion.
Right, and so we're in the discussion, so did that answer your question okay?
Mm-hmm.
You sure?
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, so all those in favor of referring this to the Town Government Study Committee, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I'm going to abstain.
What are you gonna do?
I'd like to abstain as well.
So the motion passes 2-1. 2, 2, and 1.
Well, that goes, we have to check our Roberts rule on what an abstention means. I think that's right.
I think it is. Town Council, am I correct?
Yes.
2-1. And again, I really think the makeup, and as Katie refers to, the charge of the Town Government Study Committee can really have a benefit with this. I really do. And to answer, and I think to everyone's point, every one of us at this table can have an opportunity to go and meet and speak before the Town Government Study Committee, including yourself, Mr. Zulis, regarding your concern. Everyone can.
Thank you.
I would like to thank Christine Fisk for coming here tonight and all of her companions and colleagues for sitting here for 2.5 to 3 hours. Not an
Listen
easy,
to us.
not an easy
Welcome to
thing to
government.
do. I'd particularly like to thank Lisa Troy for staying and hearing the discussion out through to the end. That means a lot to me.
Thank
None
you.
of this is personal by any of us, and I know that you know that. It's a passionate issue. emotionally charged. We're expressing ourselves, you know, as we believe, you know, as we approach this. And, you know, I know that as reasonable people, everyone can understand that and respect it for what it is. So, thank you, Lisa.
So I just procedurally, because the reason I'm abstaining really is I think we have a citizens petition that's been
Right.
submitted, and I'm not opposed to it going to the Town Government Study Committee, it's just as I was willing to submit it, for this board to submit the article. Don't we still have the citizens petition that will be going to the October
It
town
can go,
meeting?
it can go on its own. We've voted to send out, to refer it to, and hopefully they'll report back quickly.
Well, we don't know if the signatures are going to all be verified.
Oh, that's true.
We don't know that, okay? So we don't know whether it will go. My guess is that the actions of this board will energize those who want to take some action on this. And it seems to me that I'm a little unclear now.
I mean, my hope is.
Well,
Go ahead,
excuse me,
go ahead.
I'm a
go
little
ahead.
unclear now from those who abstained. Should I make a motion to submit it to town meeting, to submit it to town meeting, or not?
I think.
I mean, you could have a motion that, you could have a proposal that's submitted to Town Government Study Committee, and it's submitted to the,
Exactly.
for the warrant, and town government, then it will be on the Town Government Study Committee to finish their work before the warrant.
Right, that was
So-
really my point, was that they're not mutually exclusive,
So-
and I'm not opposed to submitting it to the Town Government Study Committee, and they could weigh in whether it's a citizen's petition or a board article.
So
Which is
given
what
that-
I expect they'll do.
Yeah. So given that, given your view, and if Melinda's view is similar, then I will make a motion to submit it as an article for town meeting.
I'll second the motion for discussion.
I just don't think that's the right thing to do. I mean, we're sending two messages. So we're sending it to Town Government Study Committee to review, and because you didn't get the vote, you want to now go around that and just send it to town meeting minute anyway.
Wait, no,
Well,
wait
that's
a
what you
minute.
just.
No, wait a minute. I'm not trying to go around anything,
Oh,
Richard.
all right.
Katie said that she doesn't find it mutually exclusive. I think she's right, and so I'm not trying to go around anything.
Okay.
If I'm slightly confused, then odds are most everyone else at home is too. I tend to agree with Richard on this. For whatever reason, this has now become very convoluted. Mike, my suggestion would be to propose it at our next Board of Selectmen meeting.
Let me make it very clear. I've made a motion to submit this for inclusion in the warrant,
Okay.
to submit this to town meeting.
Fair enough.
And that motion's been made in second.
I'm opposed.
We didn't vote yet. Well, I get you. I don't know what your objection is to letting this go to the town council, especially in light of everything that's been said here tonight. What is the rush? Why not let a body outside of us who's had a relationship, not just prior to us, but to the exact makeup of the board and the form of government we have in town today? It bothers me that you have a reluctance to want to send this to them. It just does.
well,
It's like, get it to town meeting by hell or high water, and
Well-
that doesn't sit well with me.
I don't mean to bother you.
You've had this on, you've been, I'm gonna bite my tongue here, go ahead.
Well,
The floor is
about what?
yours. Nothing.
Okay. I don't mean to bother you in any way. It just seems to me, I just have a difference of opinion, that this is something that's appropriate for the Town Government Study Committee. To me, the outside body that should determine this is town meeting. If your view is Town Government Study Committee is the outside body, that's fine. I just have a different view, that's all.
Okay.
The confusion for me on this point is the act of the petition being submitted during the citizen speak. And I viewed that, I mean, my interpretation of that was the citizens group was submitting the petition. So I don't know if we could get any clarity, or if town council, who was not here during the citizen speak portion, might give us his thought on whether we actually have an article that's submitted by a citizens group as a, subject to the town clerk confirming that the 100 registered voters have signed the petition, that's a valid petition.
You do. If the article is submitted to the Board of Selectmen, you refer to the town clerk, and the registrars check the signatures. If those check out, that article is officially submitted for inclusion in the warrant.
I get that, and Mr. Zulus is looking for us to support this. So I made a motion, it was seconded and discussed, and passed 2-1 with 2 abstentions, for our opinion, before we render our own opinion, to refer this to Town Government Study Committee to just give us their report back on their recommendations or ideas about it. There's obviously consternation here. There's some concerns on all parties, and I think part of it is in the way it was approached in the beginning, part of it is in the way it was conveyed to some of the signatures, because it's been relayed to us, several of the emails to me, to most of us, articulate that somehow we're not recognizing the female members of the board, and I think Katie clearly articulated her thoughts, and Melinda did, on, especially on that, but
So where I understand we are procedurally, then we have a citizen's petition that has been submitted to the board. The town clerk is going to have to check the signatures. And we have a motion that's been passed by this board to refer the question to, which is Mr. Zulus's presentation for a similar or the exact same language to the Town Government Study Committee for study, which they may be able to do on a parallel track, and they can come back and give an opinion to us. But I think the intervening event was the citizens group handing to the executive secretary to the board the petition with all the signatures on it.
I get that.
That's how I viewed it. And I could be wrong, but it sounds as though town council views that as an article that having been submitted prior to the August 13th deadline.
Right.
So, am I correct? So I'm getting then, if you're abstaining, before I take a vote, do you want to not send this to Town Government Study Committee?
I'm happy to hear their thoughts on it. I viewed this as a citizen petition having been submitted.
And I have to say that that was exactly what happened for me as well. And I don't view them as mutually exclusive either. I think that there's a lot of merit to sending it to this study committee, especially because there are questions about language. However, we do have the petition, and there is a mechanism to go to town meeting and have people weigh in. And my desire to have more voices, maybe more people will come to town meeting who aren't members. That would be really wonderful, actually.
Good point.
I'd love to see that, and but again, it's that procedural issue that I'm so concerned about.
So either we have if we have the procedural issue and we're concerned about it, then we should be voting to send it to them to review it, and let the citizen petition go on its own, and let Town Government Study Committee comment and report on it at town meeting, one way or the other, which will help town meeting decide, and will spurn, hopefully, the discussion you want to have. But I don't think we can have it both ways. Either we support it in its original language, and that's fine, let it go, or we have our concerns, and we want the Town Government Study Committee to weigh in on this, which is why I made the proposal in the first place. So my only thought is, if you're going to vote against this, then we might as well just withdraw from the Town Government Study Committee. If we're going to vote to send it as is, and then we're going to vote to send it to the Town Government Study Committee, we're contradicting ourselves. Both of you have said, you and Katie both said you'd like to see the Town Government Study Committee weigh in on it, but now Mr. Zulus has proposed a motion to just send it as is and support it, which I can't do in its current form. I think we need someone, and I agree with Mr. Farrington, and you and Katie, that we should have someone independent look at this, someone outside of us look at this and comment on it. And I think no better committee than them, because they're the ones who did all the work to get us to how we're here today. So, any further discussion? Because if I call for this vote and you vote this, then I'm going to revisit the other vote, which I think I can do, John, and just withdraw it. Which would.
Oh, I guess it would be to
Yeah,
reconsider it.
I'll reconsider it.
But-
I'll reconsider it.
Oh,
So what so I want to be clear, so Mike's motion, which I have seconded to discuss, is to submit the article,
As
which
is.
is the same language as what's in the citizens petition, as a board-submitted article.
Is a board submitted
In which
article.
case, we'd have two articles. We'd have the same or very similar wording, one being a citizens petition, one being a board-submitted article.
Mr. Flynn, you are recognized.
I don't wish to enter into debate, but there is an alternative.
I'll
If
take
mi-
it.
If the chairman's motion is the vote of the board tonight, you have a petition article which, if it meets the signature requirement, will be included in the warrant.
Right.
When the town government study committee finishes this work, you, the board, might have a better basis for deciding whether you support the article in its then present form. For example, they might recommend changes to it, different
Right.
wording, same concept. That's just another alternative to consider.
Right. And I get that in that, just from their initial, what Katie refers to, they had a lot of discussion, and I don't think they envisioned us being where we are so quickly right now, and that's why I really think it warrants them taking a peek at it.
May I ask a question? So the Town Government Study Committee has considered this and discussed it
They've discussed different terms, yeah, they had.
at their
They had-
meetings?
They discussed, Meg, they talked about a council, they talked about a mayor form, though, I know those things definitely were in their discussions.
So they've considered this? Oh, I didn't realize.
I don't think, so I never heard select board till you brought it up, till you came before David, Katie, and I last year.
Oh, all right, I think Mike was asking about, have they considered select board?
They considered other terms for the chief executive body, I do know that, or the form of government. Okay, thank you, John.
So John, it sounded like, so the board could later on support the article, that could support the article if the Town Government Study Committee comes back. This board could support that article.
Yes, it may look a little different, it may be the same, but
And,
yes.
and if that's the case, then the board could support this article now as well.
We already
You-
voted.
Yes,
Right.
but
Yeah.
Right.
given the vote you took, I was just suggesting another
Yeah, I
alternative to
understand.
consider.
I understand.
Because there's at least the possibility of an inconsistent position, is my only point.
Sure.
Well, and that's consistent with what we've often done on citizens petitions, is
Right.
they're submitted, and then after a while, we take a vote on whether to support them or not.
Right.
So, we could do that with the advice and input of the Town Government Study
Yes.
Committee.
That's,
Which was the whole intention of the motion I made.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Mr. Zulus has a motion. All those in favor of Mr. Zulus's motion, you want to comment again?
No.
You're leaning forward.
No.
Say
Let me
aye.
ask Mike a question.
All right, hold on. Go ahead.
Do you still see a purpose in your article, in your motion going forward, in this case, knowing that we have an opportunity to weigh in on the citizens petition?
Yeah, I think it's important for the community to know whether this board supports this article. And it may be that members of the board decide they're not ready to support this article, but I think it's important for the community to know. Certainly, there's been a number of people who've been out there getting signatures, and I think it's important for them to know.
Right, because my position is that I would support submitting the article rather than weighing in on the substance of it at this point.
I agree.
But I'd be
And that's the
willing to
motion.
submit the article,
That's
yes.
the motion. Submit the article. That is the motion.
And let town meeting decide.
Right, that's the article. That's the motion.
You good?
I'm
All-
just trying to capture.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. 3 to 2. So then, if we're going to do this, then I suppose I should make a motion and reconsider why even bother sending it to Town Government Study Committee.
Well, my vote is to submit the article, and not speaking necessarily to the merits of it, but just to submitting the article, letting town meeting decide the issue. I see no reason why we can't still get input from the Town Government Study Committee on it before we, some of us may be in favor of the substantive change at this point, and others may, like me, be willing to just submit the article and let town meeting have the discussion, and I'd be interested in hearing what the Town Government Study Committee has to say.
Right. I have to say, I think town meeting is a proper place for people to look at this. I also think that the Town Government Study Committee may come up with another term or something that we might want to submit as a friendly amendment, or, you know, something. So I'm not sure what they will say. So it's hard for me to say, no, don't do that.
So, are you telling me you want to reconsider your vote? You want me to leave it as is before I make a motion to reconsider?
I mean, it's up to you. I think you could leave it and let it ride. It passed. But,
You support the concept of it going there, of them looking at it?
well, I mean, I think it has some merit. The reason I abstained was because of the procedural issue, and I was very concerned about that, so.
Are you still concerned about that?
No, now that we got through the whole process, I'm,
Okay. Do you want to reconsider, or do you want me to just leave it as is?
you can just leave it.
All right.
As long as you're comfortable, I'm
All right.
okay. Thank you.
Moving on. Item 9, discussion approval of environmental data report letter to Massport. Michael,
It's not in the package.
It's not in the package, so-
It was being revised as of this afternoon. But an earlier draft was circulated. I don't know how recently or when everyone, I don't recall when everyone received a copy of it, but we had, Karis North's draft was submitted earlier. There have not been a lot of substantive changes. There have been wording changes, comments from the members of the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee, from the CAC representative. I think that's it. So there have been some changes, but I don't know, Emily, did the latest version get circulated today? I don't recall seeing it. Other than, I saw Karis's draft, but I don't know if it even went out to the full board.
you want to make a motion? To
Well, since
send it?
since the
Pending
deadline is
final-
July 31st, I'll move that we approve and sign a letter in response to the Logan International Airport Environmental Data Report.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? So you want to admit something just to include any other comments that have to be made so that we don't have to come back and vote on it again? Anything final that could be added, that needs to be added? We're okay?
I think it is in final
Okay.
form as
It
of
was,
this
yeah.
afternoon.
Town
Yes.
Council, Karis
Yeah.
North weighed in
Any-
late today.
Okay. Any other discussion? Good? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Item 10, bicycle ride share programming. We're giving this to,
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just an update. I want to thank Town Council, Lauren Macia from the Planning Department, and Lee Toma, who's on our Bicycle Advisory Committee. We are very close to adopting this statement of work with Lime Bike. We've decided not to work with Spin. There's been some issues with Spin. But in the process of conversations with Lee, Lauren, and Town Council, we've gotten this statement of work, which this board approved an MOU with MAPC for a bike share, dockless bike share program. 6 of the 15 communities have adopted this, and the other 9, 8 of the other 9 are in negotiations similar to ours. Just an update on it. Feedback, and Lauren's done extensive work with this. Lee Toma knows this like the back of his hand. Feedback with communities that have launched is largely positive with minimal problems. We've all seen some of the problems. Salem, Massachusetts, there's an initiative there to get calling the ant bikes that are up there, bike pollution. I know as late as 6 o'clock this evening, some type of agreement was reached between City of Quincy and OFO to remove the bikes, the yellow bikes from Quincy.
they're going completely?
Yes, yeah, there
Wow.
was something developing this afternoon when we were walking in the door here, but most part, feedback is very positive. Having worked in Boston before and worked with Hubway, which is a docking bike system that has a destination, I think the rollout should be less than aggressive. We agreed with Scott Mullen, who's their negotiating agent for Lime Bike, to 50 to 75 bikes. Spoke to the school department. Understandably, they were not interested in bike racks up at the schools. And I think they put it very eloquently that schools don't need people that don't necessarily need to be in and around our kids at schools. We did talk to the Parks Department at the recent Parks Commission Board. They approved 3 or 4 locations. So as it stands now, there's about 8 locations proposed by the town for those 50 to 75 bikes. If we can get finalized, town council had some insurance questions that he added to the document late yesterday. So the document's not yet in its final form, but you know, we're talking about Milton Station, Central Ave Station, Capon Station, Andrews Park, Kelly Field, Mary C. Lane. I still have to vet Turner's Pond with the Parks Commissioners. And then Houghton's Pond is another one of the locations which I haven't vetted through the DCR. But the idea is to roll it out slowly and efficiently. The last thing we want is bikes strewn all over the sidewalks and roadways in town. I do have full confidence in Line Bike. I worked with Kyle Gates, who's going to be their operations gentleman. He was once the operations person for Hubway in Boston, and we had a great working relationship. So the idea is to get this rolled out the door. If this board could vote on it at its next meeting on August 13th, they're quite confident, based on past experience, that the bikes could be on the street that Friday. So I'd welcome any comments or from Lee Tomer, as he is in the audience tonight. If I've missed anything, it's a pretty quick rollout. Town staff will have access to their dashboard, so we can monitor bikes. If we see bike that's, you know, hanging around in the wrong place all the time, we can have them, what they call, rebalance them and put them back in places where they've been known to have been used before. Lee, anything else I'm missing?
The only other update that I'd add is that OFO is basically withdrawing from most of the U.S., so it's not a specific problem with Quincy in particular. It's more of a funding and financing issue.
Okay, yeah.
Are they really?
Yeah.
I mean, they have painted the city of Quincy yellow in a short period of time.
I understand that they rolled out a couple hundred bikes across
Yes.
Quincy, 400 in Worcester. My understanding is that they want to focus in the U.S. on the larger markets, including, I think, San Diego, New York, and San Francisco or something like that. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, so it'll be a controlled rollout. If we see bikes in places that we don't want them, we simply pick up the phone. They do what's called rebalancing. They will bring them back to a place where the bikes are known to be picked up. And they use all that data from their app nowadays. It's literally, you download an app, you get to the bike, you snap it, it unlocks the vehicle, and off you go. When you're done, you simply park it in a safe place on the sidewalk, not hindering any type of compliance, creating a compliance issue or anything like that. There's a couple of things in here I'd still like to work through. They're looking to have them on the street 12 months out of the year. I think that's a little aggressive. I think when Old Man Winter hits, it's the last thing you want to see is some bikes that may get a little stagnant out there. But I think it's great work by Lee, again, Lauren Macia, and Town Council. So I think we're ready to take this to a vote on August 13th.
Anything else?
No,
Good.
thank
Any
you very
comments?
much.
Anybody?
Appreciate all the effort. the
Oh,
town's put
no,
into this.
you're,
We ready on the 13th?
yeah, for
We're ready on the 13th, and we're also submitting the application for a bicycle-friendly community, which is due August 9th, is
I
it?
believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Michael. Okay, item 11, discussion approval of housing subcommittee charge and organization. I'll yield to Mrs. Crum. The floor is yours. You have a half hour.
No, let's make this go quickly. So, a couple of things. I had talked to our planning chair, planning board chair, and the question came up, in this charge, do we want to specifically make it about affordability? And do we need to make that explicit, or is talking about current and trending housing needs something? So I just wanted to raise that as something that's coming from outside, but somebody who has been involved in the development of this. So I think the words are advance the vision and goals of the housing production plan and the master housing plan as well. So, so we have the question of, do we want to mention affordability, or should it be broader, but also do we want to tie it directly to the housing production plan and the master plan. That is what, I think, as I've mentioned before, Katie Conlon and Cheryl Tagayas and I have met, and actually Lauren Mazier and I, our assistant planner and I, have been meeting, met and have talked and are meeting again independently to try to move things forward. And so we've been using the housing production plan and the master plan to a lesser degree, but as information. But I'd like the board's input on that.
Oh, so, Melinda, that seems to make sense to follow the efforts of the housing production plan and the master plan, because, you know, I know that a lot of work has gone into both, and so it seems to make sense to use that as a basis. Whether that would make the charge too confining, I'm not sure, but I mean, maybe you could reference it, maybe in an including but not limited to, or something like that. Maybe you reference the work that's been done on those efforts previously.
So, okay, well, I'll just listen to everyone else. I think there are two places we could put that: goals or procedures.
I have nothing to add.
Okay.
Would this would be a committee of the board then, is that correct?
Yes.
Even though we have a planning board member on it, and it's not really a committee of both boards, it's a committee just of this board?
Right.
Okay, I just want to be clear on that.
Right.
And then I had one question, Melinda, and that's my eyes are blearing later on. The chair's responsibility for defining the composition, it seems to be that's the chair is going to nominate, because the next sentence is said nominees, so it seems to me we should maybe reference there that the chair is actually going to nominate the members.
Yeah, okay.
But that actually seemed confusing to me too, because it's the chair nominating a planning board member.
Right, no, the planning board, that.
They would be the one
right,
submitting the name.
should be, right. So what would the proper language be?
Select. A request a member of the planning board?
The way, let's see, that's interesting.
Can I make a suggestion then?
Yes,
If
please.
we say the board shall have the responsibility for defining the composition of informing the group, including that the chair shall nominate the representative from the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, say it again.
Adding at the end of after group, comma, including that the chair shall nominate the representative from the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. Okay. And then take out the last line, or?
No, I'd leave, I think it follows.
Just leave it in?
Yeah, I think it
Okay, then,
follows.
okay, nominate, okay. So that brings me to another question. It was, the suggestion was made that having one less member from the Board of Selectmen meant that scheduling was easier, and my wondering is, well, we could have two, and that actually it doesn't preclude us from, I mean, well, what are people's feelings about one or two members from the Board of Selectmen?
I'm fine with one. I mean, if there was anyone here who doesn't have a lot on their plate, so it's.
I know, but I didn't want to just present that as a fait accompli, and us not discuss it, because there could be good reasons why we'd want to, so that's
Okay
all.
with one.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with one. Are you okay with one?
I'm okay with one, I mean,
You're looking at 4 members total.
total.
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah,
see
yeah.
having more than one.
Okay, okay, good. So, let's see. The fourth thing, I'm wondering about who has the authority to make decisions about applying for, say, a grant or an initiative or something like that, because Lauren has discovered from CHAPA, which is the Citizens Housing and Planning Association, a citizens engagement initiative that they're asking for municipalities to apply to, and they would help educate communities about housing in a tailored way for that particular community. And I know Cheryl Tagayas has looked into this as well, and she supports it, and the planning department supports it. They actually started the application, but I asked them to hold off. It needs to be submitted by the 8th. I asked them to hold off until I understand who can apply for such things, because we don't necessarily have a policy, but we hear about grants being applied for all the time, and they're not all coming before us.
No, so I think, you can tell me I'm wrong, Michael, each department, they can apply for grants, and then you sign off on them as the,
Correct.
yeah, Michael signs off as the administrator? I
Okay.
mean, that's.
That's what I
I
thought.
think we'd be overwhelmed if we had, I mean, we vote on the acceptance of grants, but as far as the applications.
Right, okay.
I'd let her keep going.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, well, thank you. Okay, so, so that's that, and.
Do you want to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion, although we didn't decide where we want to add the vision and goals of the housing production plan and master plan. Should we add that in goals, or should we add it in procedures?
You can do it later. You don't have to do it now.
Don't have to do it now.
There's no rush. I mean, you can, it's brand new, you can work it out. I agree, I mean, she can work out the fine.
I think goals would be the right place to put it.
Okay, well then, do we need a motion if we're not voting?
Well, it's on here for discussion approval of housing subcommittee
Right.
charge and organization. Proposed motion to approve the charge of the housing subcommittee.
Right, I mean, we just need, if we're gonna vote it, and that's the language we're gonna put in, we just need to decide where we're putting it, and then we can vote the motion as amended, right?
Yes.
How about just at the end of the second sentence?
Thank you. Okay. So I make a motion to accept,
Approve.
sorry,
There you go, right.
thank
Yeah.
you. I have it.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the charge of the housing subcommittee as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? You good?
Yes.
Good?
Mhm.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Congrats.
Thank you.
Okay, item 12, yes. We have a motion to approve and sign the warrant for the state primary election to be held on Tuesday, September 4th, 2018.
So moved.
No, I need someone to make a motion.
Well, I'm
Moving
making
here
the
to-
motion to approve and sign
Okay.
a warrant for the state primary election on Tuesday, September 4th, 2018.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Dennehy, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, I'll be brief, but again, I continue to thank my staff. Last week, the town of Milton received a little bit over $700,000 in grants. A lot of hard work being done to find money. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the Baker Polito administration and our state electeds who are supporting all of these efforts. Most recently, most people read about the Complete Streets project. That was just under $400,000 to fix some of the pedestrian and bicycle problems that were identified in a wiki map that was presented. And the town received over 400 comments from the residents. And I continue to support that engagement from our constituents. So those projects are huge and should be in the pipeline next spring, which is great. We signed contract work this week, so that's a fast-moving current. Received another $57,000 grant. We were one of 5 communities that are trying to remediate coastal pollutants. So they will be constructing some work over at the police station in coordination with some parking issues they'll be addressing shortly. And that was almost $57,000 that Hillary Raitt, our environmental coordinator, had filed for. And then most recently, I joined Bill Clark, town planner, and Bill Ritchie, consolidated facilities director, where they received their 7th consecutive Green Communities Award, $246,000. About 30% of it is going to go into the town buildings. $172,000, or 70% of that money, is going to go into schools, boilers, LEDs. These lights here that we keep on late at night will be retrofitted to LEDs. So just great work behind the curtain by a lot of employees in town. Chief Procurement Officer Arlene Zuniga is helping behind the scenes. So pretty productive week. $700,000 coming into the town through grants at the state level. So Department of Energy and Resources, EEA, Secretary Beaton was on hand over in Winthrop on Friday. It was good. We were one of 80 communities. And Green Communities has received over $1.1 million to green our town buildings over the past 7 years. So kudos to Mr. Clark, Lauren Messier again, Bill Ritchie, Bob Mayhew, Diane Colligan, all these people that put these things together. So that's all I have for tonight.
I might have missed something. In question 8, item D, other potential Board of Selectmen sponsored articles. Isn't there another article that we potentially, is it one or more than one?
Just one.
Is the fire chief?
Mhm.
I just thought of that, and I just, you want to touch base on it? Did everyone get a chance to see this? So there was a request that was submitted by the chief to see if the town will vote to amend Article 14 of the annual town meeting held May 1st, 2017, by revising the membership of the Fire Station Building Committee.
Oh, actually, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be recused on this then, because any fire building committee, I have a ruling, because it would relate to bonding, I'm going to be recused. But could I bring up just a procedural point of order on that? Because I noticed when that was circulated to us a week or so ago, it says submitted by the fire chief. And in my experience in town meeting, articles are submitted usually by boards and committees, not usually by a department head. So I saw that and I was surprised to see it. I think it would have to be a vote of the board whether to submit it or not, but we don't normally have a school superintendent or a library director submit an article, so I just wanted to, when I saw that, I wanted to flag it and bring that point up, but I'm going to be recused on the substance of the matter.
Because I'm going to go, in my report, that's the only thing I'm going to go into is the Fire Station Building Committee, which, that's okay, so I'll do this.
So
Okay, sounds good.
Are you going to your report right after this?
Yeah, I'll go right into that, and that's all I have to cover, is just that.
I'll be back, thank you.
So this article would change the membership from 9 members to 11. 2 additional members would be the fire chief and a member of the Milton Fire Department. And it would be recommended the town vote to change the membership of the Fire Station Building Committee by deleting 9 members and replacing it with 11. 2 of the members being the fire chief and a member of the Milton Fire Department to be appointed by the moderator. Any thoughts? I'm actually fine with this.
I'm in favor of it.
I think, I've been to the meetings, the chiefs at every meeting, he should have a voice, he really should. He should have a voting voice in this. This is a big thing going forward, probably for the next 50 to 100 years for our buildings, so that's just my own opinion, and I'll listen to your thoughts.
Well,
I agree with that.
yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think this is a good stage for that to happen, where we're going to be getting technical soon.
So do I have a motion to support this article? As written, the only amended would be as I've changed, submitted by the Board of Selectmen. Or do you want to be on it as well?
Yeah, I support it if I need to be on it,
Submitted by
yeah.
the Board of Selectmen, town administrator. Okay. So do I have a motion to support this as
If you want me to read it, I'll read it. I move to see if the town will vote to amend Article 14 of the annual town meeting, held May 1st, 2017, by revising the membership of the Fire Station Building Committee to change the membership from 9 members to 11 members. The 2 additional members would be the fire chief and a member of the Town of Milton Fire Department. Do I have a second?
And do we have a second? Go
Second.
ahead. Go ahead, you
Sorry.
good? Any further discussion? You good? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. I apologize for that. I started thinking. So my only thing in the report is that I submitted some literature to you. I met with Brian Walsh, the chair, this weekend. They've done a ton of work. The only thing that I think we bring him in on the 13th. They've been presented with an idea where they would send an RFP out. They've already got selected areas of East Milton. This is specific just for East Milton to see what parcel of land might be available to buy that they don't know about or have not heard of. They might get lucky, they might get not, or they might not, but it seems prudent to do it, just to vet it out. It is a unanimous feeling of the board and the chief that the current Station 2 is not gonna work. The good thing about it is that even if we have to make a purchase, it appears that the commercial value of Engine 2 is in excess of $1 million on a commercial market. So they could use whatever we sell that for as to offset. And it appears this would be the only location that they would have to purchase. I think Engine 4, we already own a piece of property where they propose to build. And the last thing, on the Hurley Amendment, I believe we had a conversation the other day, John Flynn, Tom Hurley, Michael, and myself, on how to implement this and how it could be implemented. And the first thing we need, before we even go to town meeting in May, will be a project, and it appears that the fire station is gonna be that project that we're gonna need. It looks like they're gonna be ready in January, or whenever we have, January, February, to come forward with a total proposal for.
And Tom Hurley will be here to present that home rule petition to the new members of this board who may not have heard about it before on August 27th.
Good. That's all I have. Anybody else? Okay. Anyone else? Michael?
I'm fine.
Melinda? Tony?
Yes.
I have nothing to add, other than thank you earlier for the courtesy of allowing Jamie to come up and speak, and speaking to that a little bit and helping to sort out some of the confusion surrounding that. In hindsight, it's for the best, given the duration of this meeting, that it was not an agenda item. While I have you here, Mr. Chair and Mr. Town Administrator, I would like to formally request that it is an agenda item.
Yeah, it will be. We've already noted
Great.
that. And hopefully it's settlement then, but
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping.
Ms. Conlon, anything else?
Yeah, Mr.
Oh, yeah,
Chairman.
yeah. One thing, I already wrote a note. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm not going to
Okay,
talk
okay.
about that. I've been talking to town council at the back of the room, because I had to be recused. Sometimes being recused, same as taking a recess, sometimes that gives you a little bit of enlightenment. I am concerned that our discussion on the select board articles, now we have 2 articles being submitted, that we're in a very convoluted, I think it was a convoluted discussion because of the citizens petition being submitted. I think it's, in talking with town council John Flynn, I am not, as one member of this board, I'm not satisfied with the situation we're in which we now have a citizens petition and we have a board article that essentially say the same thing. So with apologies to my friend Mike, I'm going to move that we reconsider our vote on Mike's motion, which was to submit the article as a warrant article. And I'd like to speak to the motion to reconsider. If having voted yes, I'm able to make the motion, and someone who voted yes would have to second it. And then I'd like to speak to the motion. So it would only be Mike or Melinda who could second my motion. That's my understanding.
I'll second it because I'm really confused now.
So in terms of,
Floor is yours.
the reason I'm moving to reconsider is I think this is going to create confusion for the warrant committee, for town meeting. I think our board had a lot of confusion during our discussion, and I attribute that to the citizens petition being delivered at the selectmen's meeting, which I was, I knew they were collecting signatures, but to bring them in and to actually submit them to the board as an article, I think was an intervening event. I was not expecting that to be submitted as a citizen article tonight. So the reason I'm moving that we reconsider is I think it's better for one article, which is the citizens article, to go forward and not to have 2 articles in the warrant. I remember this happened, and I'm going by memory. I remember during the school building project, I think there was a citizen article and there was also an article by the school building committee. So in the same warrant, if I remember it correctly, and I remember there being discussion around competing articles. So the reason I'm moving to amend this is to eliminate confusion, and hopefully, since we had a motion which there was a 2-to-1 vote on, to refer it to the Town Government Study Committee for consideration, I would hope that the Town Government Study Committee would come back to us on the citizen article in a timely manner so that they would report to us before the October meeting, and we could get the benefit of their wisdom at that time, and not have two competing articles in the warrant. I think it's convoluted and confusing at this point. And so
agree.
that's why I'm, having discussed it during the break, or during my recusal break with town council, I think that that's the best thing for this board to do at this time.
Okay, so this is my first motion to reconsider, so am I going to go back to the original vote, or are we going to?
If the motion to reconsider is seconded and passes, then the previous vote is undone, and Mr. Zulus' motion is back before the Board of
Okay.
Selectmen.
So there is a motion on the floor by Ms. Conlon, which has been seconded by Mrs. Collins, to reconsider her vote. Her vote? Her vote, correct? Your vote? Is there
Board's
any-
vote.
The board's vote, the board's vote, excuse me. Is there any other conversation on this?
The board's vote on, I'm trying to capture the language. On submitting the article to town meeting?
As a selectman's article.
Thank you.
Could I also add, Mr. Chairman, that, if anyone is concerned with the wording of the citizens petition, that's going to be the article itself, but the warrant committee process, the recommendation of the warrant committee can make any changes that
Yes,
may
they
be
can.
necessary, that may come out as a result of something that the Town Government Study Committee recommends, something that we recommend, something that they may come up with on their own, or someone else, may put forward.
That was my whole intent in the beginning. Okay. All those in favor?
may I speak
Go ahead.
to the
Oh, no,
motion?
yeah, go ahead. I don't know you want to. Okay.
So I'm going to oppose the motion.
That's fine.
Because I don't think there's confusion if it's exactly the same article. And we don't have a citizen's petition that has been verified at this point. So it seems to me we might reconsider that if we do have a verified citizen petition at that point. But at this point, it seems premature because we will leave here tonight with no submitted article. So for those reasons, and also I don't think there's confusion if the language is the same, which people say it is. So for those reasons, I'm going to oppose the motion.
That's fine.
I'm just thinking.
Okay. You tell me when.
I think the objective was achieved by it being submitted in one form or another.
I agree.
think the language is being submitted, and it will be before town meeting, which was what I thought, which is where I was coming from. I'd like to see this get to town meeting and be decided there, whether it's submitted by this board or by the citizens. That, again, in my view, the citizens coming in with the article tonight was the changing event for me.
Okay. So we'll know in a short period of time whether the signatures are all certified, and then if they're not, will that be too late to add something to the warrant?
My understanding is that if they don't have 100 out of those 150 certified, then they have until August 13th to submit
it,
additional signatures, so that, and I think they'd be able to get that. So I'm confident that the article that the citizens have put forward would be included in the warrant,
Okay. Thank you.
given that there's 3 more weeks.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna,
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
So those in favor of Ms. Conlon's reconsideration motion, say aye.
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 Against?
No.
2-1, the motion passed.
Was it 2-1 or 3-1? I did.
We'd already voted, so it's 4-1. So do I need to vote again, John, and take another vote?
Yes, first of all, every member vote on the reconsideration.
Okay, fair enough. I'm clear on
Okay.
it now.
I'm with it, so it's I'm an aye as well. Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Farrington,
Yes, aye.
So pass 4-1.
Now Mr. Zulus' motion is before the board. It's as if you didn't vote on it before.
Correct. So all those in favor of Mr. Zulus's initial motion, say aye.
This is the motion to submit the article to town meeting for its consideration.
Yes.
Okay.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
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 4-1. Okay. Moving on. Does anyone else have any, citizens speak for his response, we did. Does anyone else have anything in their members' report? Mr. Zulus? Oh, go ahead, Ms. Conlon.
Did the town administrator mention the latest on the 131 Elliott Street?
No, that's why I was,
I think you should mention that.
you do, because that's why I was looking to you. Go ahead.
What?
I'm giving it to
Yeah.
you.
I was going to wait to see if you wanted to.
Well, the town administrator and I had some good news from the Connollys today that they've obtained their DEP approval, which is a good thing. That was the next step in the process, the thing that caused the delay from May to not be able to do the demolition. So there's a lot more work. I know Mike has already been in touch with the MBTA,
Sure.
and he can speak to that.
Yeah, so I spoke to Joe Gaida today from the MBTA. He's thrilled as well. We have a site visit with JDC Demo and the developer on Wednesday at 10:30 to walk the site and see how they're going to handle the pre-demo work. But we are still cautioning that the plan that they put in place and submit, after they submit their license agreement to the MBTA is approved. And then we're going to sprint to the finish line. And I think we would all be very happy to see this building come down Labor Day weekend. So that's the goal. The T is on board with that. The developers are on board. The demo contractor is going to submit what he needs to submit to the T. And we're going to do a site visit on Wednesday just to walk through. Mr. Prondak had some concerns about how they're going to handle the pre-demo work. So thank you to Selectwoman Conlon for her work with this. It's been arduous, and the confirmation from DEP today in that email was resounding. So,
Well, thank you to the town administrator, the building commissioner, and everyone on the town team who's been involved, because it has been a team effort, and to a lot of our former colleagues and former planning board members and everyone who's been involved in the process. So next step, but a lot more still to come.
there will be some mobilizing over the next couple of days as they start to move stuff around and get ready. But that site visit on Wednesday is very important, and obviously the submission of paperwork to the MBTA. The MBTA emphatically stated after the last misstep that they weren't going to do that again. They had assets ready to go, and had to pull everything back. They're not going to do that again. So crossing T's and dotting I's, but very, very productive news today.
One question. So this means if the site visit is okay, they can actually start going in there and moving things and doing preliminary work before
Yes.
the total demolition? That's all we're waiting on now, is just the site visit?
Yeah, and they have 2 documents to submit to the T.
Okay,
They need a right-of-way access from the control board,
all right.
so that can be done in the parallel world, but, yes.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Okay, future agenda items?
I've got a bunch written down here.
You got 30 seconds.
National Grid, Falcone 40R, Nancy Bersani, Animal Control Officer. Like to revisit the Traffic Commission appointees. I think there's 2 residents that still haven't been
Waiting.
appointed.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Fire Building Committee Chair. I think the Pilot Committee might want to come in and touch the wall at some of the stuff that's been going on. The Bike Share Agreement to be ratified. We still have to appoint a board member to the Youth Task Force and designate a charge to that. And the Town Treasurer has a useful life and a bond sale that needs to be approved. Additionally, the Policy Committee met this morning, and they have a couple of second readings to bring forward.
And Governor Stoughton.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody, before we go into executive session? Okay, so with that, we're going to, I have a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to litigation. Update from Town Council John Flynn, who's with us here tonight, believing that having such discussion in open session would have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the board, and return to open session to adjourn.
Seconded.
Okay. Mr. Farrington? Yes, we're gonna go in, vote, roll call vote. Aye?
Aye.
Mrs. Collins?
Aye.
Mr. Wells, aye.
Aye.
Mr. Zulus, aye. Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
We are in executive session.